Hello and welcome back. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments about a Reddit story that stuck with you or caught you off guard. Your comment might be the perfect thing for someone listening right now. Now relax, get cozy, and enjoy tonight's stories. My girlfriend is constantly criticizing my food choices, and it's tearing our relationship apart. I'm a 28-year-old guy named Daniel Harper, and I never thought food would be the thing that made me question an otherwise loving relationship. I've been dating my girlfriend, Emily Ross, for a little over 2 years, and for the most part, we've been solid. We live together in a small apartment in Ohio. We both work full-time. We talk about the future. And until recently, I thought we were on the same page about respect and boundaries. The problem started slowly, which is probably why I ignored it for so long. Emily is 25 and very into health and fitness. She follows a lot of nutrition influencers, tracks her macros, meal preps every Sunday, and reads ingredient labels like it's a second language. I'm not unhealthy, but I'm not obsessive either. I work in it, sit at a desk all day, go to the gym a few times a week, and I eat what I consider a normal, balanced diet. I cook at home, I like burgers and pizza sometimes, I enjoy ice cream, and I don't feel guilty about it. At first, Emily's comments were small and easy to brush off. If I grabbed chips at the store, she would say something like, "Wow, that's a lot of sodium." If I ordered a burger when we went out, she would joke about me clogging my arteries. I laughed it off because I thought she was teasing and because I didn't want to seem defensive. I figured it was just her personality and her being passionate about nutrition. Over time, the comments stopped feeling like jokes. They started sounding like lectures. If I cooked pasta, she would ask why I didn't choose whole wheat. If I bought cereal, she would hold the box and read the sugar content out loud. If I came home with fast food after a long day, she would sigh and ask if I cared about my long-term health at all. I started to feel like a child being scolded instead of an adult making his own choices. One night really stands out to me. I had worked late, my boss Mark had dumped a last-minute project on me, and I was exhausted. I stopped at a drive-thru and brought home a bag of burgers and fries. Emily was sitting on the couch with her meal prep containers laid out. When she saw the bag, she didn't even say hello. She just said, "Seriously, Daniel." I asked what her problem was, and she said, "You know that food is garbage, right?" I told her I was tired and hungry and didn't want to cook. She said that was just an excuse and that I was sabotaging myself. That turned into our first real argument about food. I told her I didn't appreciate being talked down to. She said she was just trying to help me and that she didn't want to watch me ruin my body. I remember feeling a knot in my chest because it sounded less like concern and more like control. I ended up eating in silence while she shook her head and cleaned the kitchen aggressively. After that, I became more aware of how often she commented on what I ate. It wasn't just at home. When we went out with friends, she would comment too. We met up with my college friend Jason Miller and his girlfriend Lauren Bennett at a Mexican restaurant. I ordered tacos and a beer. Emily ordered a salad with grilled chicken and water. When the food came, she laughed and said must be nice not caring about calories. Jason looked uncomfortable and Lauren quickly changed the subject. I wanted to disappear into my seat. Later, Jason texted me asking if everything was okay because Emily seemed harsh. That embarrassed me even more because now other people were noticing. I started to feel defensive every time I ate around her. I would hide snacks in my desk at work. I would eat lunch alone instead of with her on weekends. I realized I was changing my behavior to avoid criticism, and that didn't sit right with me. I tried talking to her calmly. I told her that her comments were hurting me and making me feel judged. She said I was being too sensitive and that she would never criticize me if I made better choices. That sentence stuck with me. It felt like conditional acceptance, like she only approved of me when I fit into her idea of health. Things escalated when we went to a family barbecue at her parents' house. Her dad, Robert Ross, grilled burgers and hot dogs. I grabbed a burger and some potato salad. Emily loudly asked if I wanted a salad instead and said I'd been eating terribly all week. Her mom, Karen Ross, gave her a look and tried to smooth it over, but the damage was done. I felt humiliated standing there, holding my plate like I'd done something wrong. On the drive home, I told her that was unacceptable. She said she was embarrassed by my eating habits and didn't want her family thinking she didn't care about health. That hurt more than anything else she'd said. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about her image. We didn't talk much that night. I slept on the couch because I needed space. Lying there, I started thinking about the future. What would this be like if we got married? Would she monitor everything I ate forever? Would she talk to our kids like that someday? Would every choice I make be up for debate? A week later, things got even worse. I went to the doctor for a routine checkup. My blood work came back normal. My doctor, Dr. Stephen Collins, said my health was fine and just advised moderation like he does with everyone. I mentioned this to Emily, thinking it might reassure her. Instead, she said, doctors don't always know best and that problems can show up later. It felt like no amount of evidence would ever be enough. The breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon. I was meal prepping my own food, which I had started doing to compromise. I made grilled chicken, rice, and vegetables. I also made a small batch of brownies because I enjoy baking and wanted something sweet for the week. Emily walked in, saw the brownies, and said, "Why are you even bothering with healthy meals if you're just going to ruin it with that?" Something snapped in me. I told her I was done being policed. I said I'm an adult and I get to decide what I eat. I said her constant criticism was damaging our relationship and my self-esteem. She cried and said I was attacking her and that she only cares because she loves me. I told her love doesn't feel like this. Love doesn't make you feel ashamed for eating a brownie. Now we're in this tense standoff. We still live together, but things feel fragile. We talk about bills and work, but avoid deeper conversations. I catch her watching what I eat even when she doesn't comment. I feel myself pulling away emotionally because I don't feel accepted as I am. I'm torn because I do love her. She's smart, driven, and supportive in other areas of my life. But this issue feels bigger than food. It feels like a fundamental lack of respect for my autonomy. I don't know if this is something we can work through or if it's a sign that we're incompatible long term. I never imagined I'd be questioning my relationship because of meals and snacks, but here I am feeling anxious every time I open the fridge in my own home. I just want to feel like myself again without feeling judged by the person who's supposed to be my partner. Stories number 2. My birthday turned into a public humiliation I never agreed to. I still feel stupid writing this because a part of me keeps thinking I should have seen it coming, and another part of me keeps replaying everything like, if I just change one decision, the outcome would be different. I am in my mid-20s, and I thought I had a solid group of friends and a girlfriend who actually loved me. My birthday was supposed to be simple this year. I told everyone I didn't want a big deal. I wanted dinner, maybe drinks, nothing flashy. I have never liked being the center of attention. Everyone who knows me knows that. Or at least I thought they did. My girlfriend Emily had been weird for weeks leading up to my birthday. She kept smiling at her phone and saying things like, "You're going to remember this birthday forever." I assumed she meant something sweet. I trusted her. We had been together for almost 2 years. We talked about moving in together. I thought we were on the same page. My friends were also acting strange. Jake kept asking me if I was excited. Ryan kept laughing when I said I was just tired from work and wanted a quiet night. I chalked it up to them planning a surprise dinner or something harmless. The night of my birthday, Emily told me to dress nice, but not too nice. That should have been my first red flag. She blindfolded me when we got into the car, which I hated, but she insisted. I remember laughing nervously and telling her I trusted her even though my stomach felt off. When we arrived, she guided me inside somewhere and told me to wait. I heard people whispering and giggling. I assumed it was friends getting ready to yell surprise. When she took the blindfold off, everyone yelled my name instead of surprise, and there was music blasting. We were in a crowded bar, not one I had ever said I liked. There were people I didn't even recognize. Some were holding phones already pointed at me. I felt my face get hot. Emily kissed my cheek and told me to relax and have fun. I tried. I really tried. I smiled and hugged people and said thank you even though my heart was racing. Then Emily clinked a glass and told everyone to gather around. I thought maybe she was going to say something nice. She grabbed a microphone from the DJ and started talking about how shy I am and how it was time to break me out of my shell. People laughed. I laughed too, even though it already felt wrong. She said she had planned something unforgettable. That word again? Unforgettable. She told me to stand on a small stage area near the DJ booth. I didn't want to, but everyone was chanting my name. Jake pushed me forward jokingly. Ryan said, "Don't be a baby." I felt trapped. Emily told me to sit on a chair in the middle. That's when I noticed a woman I didn't know wearing a revealing outfit standing nearby. My stomach dropped. Emily announced to everyone that I had always joked about fantasies and that she decided to give me the ultimate birthday gift. She said I deserved a lap dance. The crowd went wild. I froze. I never joked about that. Not like that. Maybe once years ago in a stupid conversation, but not something I wanted in public. Not something I wanted at all. I looked at her and shook my head. She thought I was playing along. The music changed and the woman started dancing toward me. People were cheering and recording. Someone yelled, "This is epic." I felt sick. I kept saying no quietly at first. Emily was laughing and clapping. Jake was filming. Ryan was shouting encouragement. I stood up and said stop louder this time. The music kept going. The dancer looked confused. I said stop again and pushed the chair back. That's when the mood shifted. People booed. Someone yelled, "What a buzzkill." Emily's face hardened. She grabbed my arm and whispered, "What is wrong with you?" I told her I didn't want this. I told her I was embarrassed. She rolled her eyes and told me I was humiliating her in front of everyone. The irony of that still hurts. She took the microphone again and told everyone I was being dramatic and that this was supposed to be fun. She joked that I must be scared of women. People laughed again. I felt so small. I walked off the stage area and tried to leave. Jake blocked me and said, "Dude, it's just a joke." Ryan said, "You're ruining your own birthday." I pushed past them and went outside. I could hear laughter behind me. I sat on the curb trying to breathe. My phone started blowing up with notifications. People had already posted videos. Captions like "when your boyfriend can't handle a little fun." Emily came out a few minutes later, furious. She told me I embarrassed her and wasted her money. She said I should have just gone along with it. I told her she crossed the line. She said I was ungrateful. We argued in the street while people walked by. She accused me of making her look like a bad girlfriend. I asked her why my comfort didn't matter. She said it was my birthday and she was trying to do something exciting. I asked her why she didn't ask me. She said surprises don't work like that. I left and took a rideshare home. None of my friends came after me. Not one. The next day, I woke up to messages saying I overreacted. Jake said the internet is forever, and I should have thought about that before storming off. Ryan said Emily cried all night, and I should apologize. Emily sent me a long text about how hurt she was and how she needed space. I watched the videos people posted of me looking uncomfortable and confused while everyone laughed. Comments from strangers called me weak and said Emily deserved better. Some people tagged my workplace. I asked friends to take the videos down. They said it wasn't that serious. Emily refused to ask anyone to remove anything because she said I caused the scene. I started questioning everything. Were these people ever my friends? Did Emily ever respect me? I kept replaying moments from our relationship where she dismissed my feelings and called me sensitive. I realized this wasn't just about one night. It was about how easy it was for them to sacrifice my dignity for entertainment. I haven't spoken to Emily in days. Part of me feels guilty because everyone says it was a joke, and I ruined it. Another part of me feels betrayed in a way I can't fully explain. I trusted them. I told them I hated being the center of attention. They used that against me. They turned my birthday into content. Now I'm sitting here wondering if I should cut all of them off or if I'm actually the problem like they keep saying. I can't stop thinking about how alone I felt standing there while people who claimed to love me laughed. I don't know how you come back from realizing the people closest to you were okay humiliating you as long as they got a good reaction out of it. I never thought my birthday would end with me questioning every relationship in my life. I don't know what to do next. Update. My birthday turned into a public humiliation I never agreed to. It's been a little over 2 weeks since my birthday, and I honestly didn't expect things to unravel the way they did. After that night, I stayed quiet for a few days because I didn't trust myself to talk without either exploding or folding and apologizing just to make everyone else comfortable again. I reread the messages people sent me over and over. The more distance I got from it, the more I realized how one-sided every conversation felt. Not a single person asked how I was feeling. Every message was about Emily being upset or the vibe being ruined, or how awkward it was for everyone else. Emily finally came over to talk in person. She didn't come alone. She brought Ryan with her because she said she wanted a neutral person there. That alone told me everything. Ryan sat on my couch like a mediator while Emily explained how hurt she was and how blindsided she felt by my reaction. She said she spent weeks planning my birthday and everyone was excited and I made her look like a villain. When I tried to explain how trapped and embarrassed I felt, she kept interrupting me to say that wasn't her intention. Ryan backed her up and said intent matters more than feelings. Something in me just snapped at that point. I told him that intent doesn't erase impact, and that my no should have mattered even if it ruined the mood. Emily said I never clearly said no. I told her I stood up and said stop in front of everyone. She said she thought I was nervous and playing along. I asked her why laughing at me and calling me dramatic felt like care to her. She didn't answer that. She just said relationships require compromise. I asked her if she would have compromised if the situation was reversed. If I put her on a stage and let strangers laugh at her discomfort. She said that was different. That answer hurt more than anything else she said. Ryan looked uncomfortable and said maybe we should take a break from the conversation. I told them both that the break already happened the moment my boundaries became a punchline. After they left, I blocked Ryan and Jake. That was harder than I expected. I kept thinking about all the years of inside jokes and late nights and how quickly they chose entertainment over me. Jake tried to contact me through another friend and said I was being dramatic and that the internet had already moved on, so I should too. That's when I realized they weren't sorry. They were annoyed that I didn't play my role. The videos are still up, but fewer people are engaging with them now. My workplace never said anything directly, but my manager did ask if everything was okay, in a way that felt loaded. I told him it was a misunderstanding, and he let it go. That stress alone made me realize how serious this actually was. A joke doesn't follow you into your professional life like that. Emily sent me another message a few days later saying she missed me, and that maybe we both handled things badly. I asked her a simple question. If the same situation happened again, would she stop the moment I said no, even if everyone else was disappointed? She didn't respond for hours. When she finally did, she said she didn't want to live in fear of upsetting me all the time. That was the moment I knew this wasn't salvageable. I ended things over text because every attempt at a conversation turned into me defending my right to basic respect. She told people I broke up with her over a harmless birthday surprise. I stopped correcting the story. Anyone who believes that version without asking me probably doesn't need access to my life anymore. What surprised me most was who did reach out. A friend I hadn't talked to much recently, named Marcus, messaged me and said he was there that night and felt uncomfortable but didn't know how to step in. He apologized for not saying anything and said watching the aftermath made him realize how messed up it was. We talked for hours. It didn't fix everything, but it reminded me that not everyone thinks humiliation is humor. I still feel angry sometimes. I still replay the moment everyone laughed and wonder how I missed the signs. But I also feel lighter, not constantly minimizing myself to keep others entertained. My birthday didn't turn out how I wanted, but it forced me to see the truth about the people around me. I don't know what my social circle will look like going forward. I know it will be smaller. I also know I won't apologize for having boundaries anymore. If that makes me sensitive or boring in someone else's story, then so be it. I'd rather be alone than surrounded by people who think my discomfort is funny. Stories number 3. My choice to skip my dad's wedding. I never thought I would be the person who skipped a parent's wedding. Growing up, I always believed that no matter what happened between adults, kids showed up. You smiled, you hugged people, you pretended everything was normal. That is what family did. My name is Aaron. I am 27 years old, and I live in Indiana. This story really started 3 years ago when my mom Diane found out my dad, Robert, was cheating on her. They had been married for almost 30 years. In our town, they were known as the steady couple. My dad worked in sales. My mom worked at the public library. They volunteered at church events, hosted barbecues, and never missed a holiday. I believed their marriage was boring in the best way. The day everything blew up, I was visiting for the weekend. I walked into the house and felt the air was wrong. My mom was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. My dad was standing near the counter, arms crossed, not saying anything. My mom looked at me and said, "Your father has been lying to us." She showed me messages, hundreds of them. A woman named Melissa. Jokes, flirting, plans to meet, pictures I did not want to see. My dad admitted it had been going on for over a year. He said he was sorry. He said it just happened. I remember thinking, nothing just happens for that long. That night, my mom cried in her bedroom. I sat on the floor outside her door because she did not want to be alone. My dad slept in the guest room. The house felt like a stranger's house. The divorce took almost a year. It was messy. Lawyers, arguments, money problems, and endless tension. My dad moved into an apartment across town. My mom kept the house but struggled to pay for it. I tried to be neutral, but it felt impossible. 6 months after the divorce was final, my dad told me he was officially dating Melissa. He said it carefully, like he was handing me something fragile. I told him I did not want to meet her. He said he understood, but I could tell it hurt him. My younger brother, Kevin, handled it differently. He met Melissa, went to their place, tried to move on. He said holding anger would only poison me. I told him I was not trying to be angry. I was just not ready. My dad and I still met for lunch sometimes. We talked about sports, work, and anything except his new life. But I always felt like Melissa was there, even when she was not. Every time he checked his phone and smiled, I knew it was her. Last year, he called me and said he had news. I already knew what it was before he said it. He told me he and Melissa were engaged. He sounded excited and nervous. My stomach dropped. He asked if I would come to the wedding. I told him I needed time to think. He said he hoped I would be there. I talked to my mom about it. She had moved into a smaller place after selling the house. She looked tired, but stronger than before. She told me, "Do what feels right, not what looks right." I could not imagine sitting there, watching my dad marry the woman he cheated with. I pictured my mom alone that day. I pictured smiling for photos that felt fake. Every time I imagined it, my chest felt tight. My best friend Tyler told me I did not owe anyone my peace. My aunt Sharon told me family forgives and moves on. Everyone had an opinion. 2 months before the wedding, my dad called again. I told him I would not be there. I said I loved him, but I could not celebrate something that started by breaking our family. There was a long silence. He said he was disappointed, but he respected my choice. After that, he called less. When we talked, it felt careful, like walking on glass. Kevin was mad at me. He said I was making things harder than they needed to be. I asked him if our mom had not already lost enough. He did not answer. Relatives started calling. My Uncle Frank said my absence would send a message. I said that was exactly what it was. The night before the wedding, I barely slept. I kept thinking about my dad looking around and seeing my empty seat. Part of me felt guilty. Another part felt like I was finally being honest. On the wedding day, I went to my mom's place. We ordered pizza and watched a stupid movie. She did not cry, but I could tell she was trying not to think about it. She looked at me and said, "Thank you for being here." That made everything feel worth it. That night, my dad texted me a photo of him and Melissa in their wedding clothes. They looked happy. He said he wished I was there. I replied that I hoped he was happy. Since then, things have been strange. My dad and I talk, but there is a wall between us. Kevin still thinks I was wrong. Some relatives avoid the topic. Others quietly tell me they understand. I do not hate my dad. I do not even hate Melissa. I just could not pretend that day meant something good to me. Maybe someday I will sit in a room with them and feel normal. But that day is not today. Update: my choice to skip my dad's wedding. It has been almost 8 months since the wedding, and I did not expect how long the feelings from that day would follow me. I thought once the day passed, everything would slowly go back to normal. It did not. At first, things were just quiet. My dad, Robert, and I still texted, but it was short messages. Things like, "How's work?" or "Hope you're doing okay." We used to talk on the phone for an hour at a time. Now it was 10 minutes, if that. I could tell he was trying, but I could also tell he was hurt. A few weeks after the wedding, my brother Kevin invited me to his place. I went because I missed him, and I knew we had things we needed to say. We ate pizza and watched a game, but the tension was heavy. Finally, he said, "Do you realize how much you hurt Dad?" I told him I never wanted to hurt him. I told him I was just trying to survive something that already hurt too much. Kevin said I was being selfish. He said Dad had moved on, and I was stuck in the past. I told him some pasts do not just disappear because someone else is ready to forget them. We argued for almost an hour. Voices were raised. At one point, he said, "You chose Mom over Dad." That hit me hard. I said I did not choose sides. I chose honesty. I left that night feeling like I lost something with my brother too. My mom, Diane, never pressured me about my choice, but I could tell it meant something to her. She never said it out loud, but the way she looked at me that day, the way she hugged me, told me everything. She has been doing better. She got a new job at a school library and seems lighter, but there are still moments when she looks far away, like she is remembering a life that no longer exists. 2 months after the wedding, my dad asked if we could meet for lunch. I almost said no, but I went. He looked different. Not bad, just different. Married different. He talked about work for a while, then finally said, "Do you still think I'm a bad person?" I did not know how to answer. I told him I think he is a good person who made choices that hurt people deeply. He looked down and said he lives with that every day. He said he hoped getting married would fix things, but it did not fix what he broke with me. He told me Melissa wanted to meet me again. I said I was not ready. He said he understood, but I could see disappointment in his face again. That same look from when I first said I would not go to the wedding. A few weeks later, Melissa sent me a message herself. She said she knew she was part of something painful and that she wished things were different. She said she did not expect forgiveness, but she hoped someday we could at least be in the same room. I did not reply. Not because I was angry, but because I did not know what to say. Family events have been strange. At Thanksgiving, my dad and Melissa went to her family's place. Kevin went with them. I stayed with my mom. It felt like 2 separate families now. Same blood, different worlds. Some relatives stopped inviting me to things because they did not want awkwardness. Others invited me and not my dad. It feels like every gathering is a quiet choice that someone has to make. Around Christmas, my dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. That scared me at first. He does not usually do that. He said he just wanted to see me. We sat on the couch like strangers for a while. Then he said, "I know I can't change what I did, but I don't want to lose my son too." That broke something in me. I told him he did not lose me, but he changed how close we could be. I told him I am still healing from watching my family fall apart. He said he understands, but I do not think he really can. Kevin and I barely talk now. Sometimes I miss the version of him from before all this. I miss when we were just brothers, not people standing on different sides of a broken bridge. Sometimes I wonder if I should have gone to the wedding just to avoid all this damage. Maybe if I had smiled and clapped and pretended, things would be easier now. But then I think about how that would have felt inside me, and I know I would have been lying to myself. I am not proud of the distance in my family. I am not happy about it, but I am also not sorry for protecting myself. I still love my dad. I still love my brother. I still love my mom. But loving people does not always mean standing where they want you to stand. I am learning that some choices do not end when you make them. They keep echoing. They change the shape of your life. All you can do is live with them honestly and hope that one day the people you love will understand why you stood where you did. Stories number 4. My roommate thinks using soap in the bathroom is optional and it's blowing up my life. I never thought I would be the kind of person who ends up spiraling over something as basic as soap, but here I am typing this out because I honestly don't know if I'm losing my mind or if. This situation is as not normal as it feels to me. I'm posting because I need outside perspective from people who don't live in this apartment and aren't already tired of hearing me talk about it. I'm a 29-year-old guy living in Ohio. About a year ago, I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment to save money after a breakup. Rent is insane, and I didn't want to move back in with my parents. I found a roommate through a mutual friend, and everything seemed fine at first. His name is Tyler, and he's 31. He works in sales. I work remotely in it. When we met, he seemed normal, clean enough, polite, maybe a little socially awkward, but nothing alarming. The first few weeks were great. We mostly kept to ourselves. We had separate bathrooms, which was a big selling point for me. Mine is attached to my bedroom. His is the main bathroom off the hallway. We share the kitchen and living room. I'm mentioning the bathroom setup because it matters later. About a month in, I started noticing a smell. At first, I thought it was the trash or something in the fridge. It was this sour, almost musty odor that would come and go. I cleaned the kitchen, took out the trash, wiped everything down. The smell would disappear and then come back a day later. Then one night, I walked past the hallway bathroom and the smell hit me hard. It was unmistakably coming from there. I figured maybe the toilet needed to be cleaned or something. I didn't say anything because it wasn't my bathroom, and I didn't want to be that guy who micromanages a grown adult. Over time, the smell got worse. It wasn't just a dirty bathroom smell. It was like old sweat mixed with something rotten. I could smell it from the living room couch. Friends started commenting on it when they came over. My friend Marcus joked that it smelled like a locker room. I laughed it off, but inside I was mortified. Eventually, I couldn't ignore it anymore. One evening, I knocked on Tyler's door and tried to bring it up gently. I said something like, "Hey man, this is awkward, but there's kind of a smell coming from the hallway bathroom and it's starting to drift into the common areas." I tried to keep my tone light. Tyler looked genuinely confused. He said he hadn't noticed anything. He said he cleans his bathroom regularly. I asked what he uses to clean. He said water. I thought he was joking. I laughed a little and said, "No, seriously, what cleaner do you use?" He looked at me like I was the weird one and said just water, sometimes hot water. I asked if he uses soap or disinfectant. He said no, because water washes everything away. That was the first moment I felt my stomach drop. I didn't want to argue, so I just said, "Okay, maybe try using some cleaner or soap and see if it helps." He shrugged and said sure. For a couple of days, the smell seemed slightly better, so I assumed maybe he listened. Then things escalated in a way I did not expect. A few weeks later, I came home from grocery shopping and found Tyler in the kitchen washing his hands. Or at least that's what I thought he was doing. He turned on the water, rubbed his hands together for maybe 3 seconds, turned it off, and grabbed a paper towel. No soap. I stood there awkwardly, and finally asked if he forgot the soap. He laughed and said he doesn't use soap on his hands unless they're visibly dirty. He said water is enough for everyday stuff, like using the bathroom. I asked him if he meant just peeing or everything. He said everything, number 1 and number 2. He said soap dries out his skin and that humans survived thousands of years without it. I didn't even know how to respond. I just grabbed my groceries and went to my room. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about every surface in the apartment. The fridge handle, the doorknobs, the couch. I felt like I was living in a petri dish. The next day, I noticed my dish sponge was missing. I asked Tyler about it. He said he used it to clean the toilet bowl because he didn't have a toilet brush. I wish I was making that up. I told him that was disgusting and that sponge was for dishes. He looked offended and said he rinsed it really well. That turned into our first real argument. I told him that water doesn't kill germs and that soap exists for a reason. He told me I was being dramatic and germ obsessed. He said his immune system is strong and he never gets sick. I started buying my own everything. My own sponge that I kept locked in my room. My own paper towels. I wiped down surfaces constantly. I even bought disinfectant wipes and cleaned the doorknobs daily. Tyler noticed and started making comments about me being paranoid. Then came the incident that pushed me over the edge. One night, I had my girlfriend Emily over. She's 27 and works as a nurse. We were watching a movie on the couch when she went to use the bathroom. She used the hallway bathroom because my bedroom door was locked and she didn't want to bother me. She came back looking pale. She sat down next to me and whispered that something was seriously wrong with the bathroom. After she left later that night, she told me the sink had no soap at all. No hand soap, no bar soap, nothing. She said there were brown stains on the sink faucet and the toilet seat. She said the smell made her gag. She asked me if Tyler actually washes his hands. I told her the truth. She looked horrified. As a nurse, she sees infections all the time. She told me flat out that this was a health hazard. The next day, I confronted Tyler again, this time more firmly. I told him that not using soap after using the toilet is not normal and that it's unsafe. I told him my girlfriend works in healthcare and confirmed this. He snapped back that he doesn't care what my girlfriend thinks and that I'm not his parent. He accused me of trying to control him in his own home. He said as long as he pays rent, he can clean and wash however he wants. I said that stops being just his business when we share common spaces. Things got even worse when I noticed he was using my towel. I keep a towel hanging in the kitchen for drying hands after washing. One day, I saw him dry his hands on it after using the bathroom. I lost it. I yelled. I told him to never touch my things again. He yelled back and said towels are meant to be shared. He said I was acting like he was diseased. He stormed off to his room and slammed the door. Since then, the apartment feels tense all the time. We barely speak except to argue. I started spending more time at Emily's place just to avoid being home. But I can't move out easily. Our lease has 6 months left. Breaking it would cost me thousands. I tried talking to the landlord about the smell. The landlord's name is Robert. He came by to inspect the bathroom. Tyler cleaned it beforehand using only water again. Robert said it smelled fine and suggested we open windows more often. I felt completely dismissed. I talked to my mom Linda about it. She said it's gross, but also said I might need to just tough it out until the lease ends. My dad Frank told me to tell Tyler to grow up or move out. Easy for him to say. I even talked to a coworker Jasmine about it during a video call. She laughed at first and then said that's actually horrifying. She suggested I document everything in case it turns into a legal issue or health complaint. Now Tyler is accusing me of harassing him. He says I make comments every time he uses the bathroom. He says I've made the apartment uncomfortable. He told me if I keep it up, he'll report me to the landlord for creating a hostile living environment. At the same time, I feel like I'm living with someone who doesn't believe in basic hygiene. I'm constantly anxious. I wipe down my phone. I wash my hands constantly. I don't invite friends over anymore. Emily refuses to come over at all now. I keep replaying conversations in my head, wondering if I handled this wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have confronted him so directly. Maybe I should have just moved out immediately. But also, why is it on me to accept something that feels objectively unsanitary? I've gone down internet rabbit holes reading about germs and fecal bacteria. I know soap matters. This isn't some weird preference like using a different brand. This is about not using soap at all. Tyler genuinely believes soap is unnecessary. He told me he thinks companies invented it to make money. He said water has worked for him his whole life. He says, I'm overreacting because I grew up sheltered. I grew up pretty normal. I was taught to wash my hands. That's it. This feels like the bare minimum. Now I'm stuck questioning myself. Am I being dramatic? Is it actually not normal to skip soap? Is this something people secretly do and just don't talk about? Or am I right to be disturbed and worried? I don't want to escalate this into a full-blown legal war, but I also don't want to spend 6 more months feeling like my home is contaminated. I'm tired of being anxious in my own apartment. I honestly just want to know if I'm overreacting or if this is as not normal as it feels to me. Stories number 5. My friend disappeared into her missing boyfriend, and it's slowly wrecking our friendship. I'm writing this because I don't know where else to put these feelings, and I'm starting to wonder if I'm a terrible person for being tired of this situation. I'm a 23-year-old woman living in the US, and my close friend Hannah is 24. We've been friends since college, and until recently, I would have said she was one of my safest people. She has been dating her boyfriend Eric, who is also 24, for a little over a year. 5 months ago, he stopped responding to her entirely. No breakup, no explanation, just silence. At first, it sounded like one of those short-term panic situations. Hannah called me late one night, crying, and saying Eric hadn't answered her text for a few days. She said his phone was going straight to voicemail, and his social media had gone quiet. I told her it was probably a misunderstanding, or maybe he lost his phone, or something dumb. I drove over to her apartment with ice cream, and we sat on her floor, scrolling through old messages, and convincing ourselves it would be fine. A week passed, then 2, then a month. Eric never replied. No calls, no texts, no reaction to messages from mutual friends. He didn't block her as far as we could tell. He just vanished. Hannah tried everything that still felt reasonable. She texted him. She emailed him. She messaged his sister Lauren, who said she hadn't heard from him either, and assumed he was just being distant. That made it worse, because it meant he wasn't just avoiding Hannah. He was avoiding everyone. By month 2, Hannah stopped sleeping well. She started calling me multiple times a day just to talk through the same questions. What if he was hurt? What if he was depressed? What if he was dead? What if he met someone else and was too cowardly to say it? Every conversation circled back to Eric. I listened because that's what friends do, and because honestly, I was scared too. Someone doesn't just drop off the planet at 24 with no explanation. Around month 3, things shifted. Hannah stopped framing it as worry and started framing it as waiting. She talked like Eric was definitely coming back, and this was just a test of loyalty. She refused to believe he could be gone by choice. When our friend Megan suggested maybe he ghosted her, Hannah snapped and said Megan was cruel and negative. Megan pulled back after that. Hannah also stopped showing up to things. Birthday dinners, movie nights, group hikes. She would cancel last minute or just not respond. When she did come, she was distracted and quiet, and if anyone tried to talk about their own life, she would redirect it back to Eric. I remember telling her about a promotion I was excited about, and she nodded for maybe 10 seconds before saying she wondered if Eric would be proud of her new job. That stung more than I expected. By month 4, it started affecting more than just social plans. Hannah would show up at my place unannounced late at night, crying and wanting to analyze old photos or reread messages for hidden meaning. If I said I was tired or had work in the morning, she'd accuse me of abandoning her like everyone else. Once she said I was the only thing keeping her grounded, and if I pushed her away, she didn't know what she'd do. That scared me, because it felt like too much weight for one person to carry. I suggested therapy gently more than once. I suggested talking to a counselor or even calling a non-emergency line to ask about missing persons resources. Hannah shut all of that down. She said therapy was for people who had given up. She said reporting him would be a betrayal, because what if he just needed space? She told me I didn't understand real love because I'd never been ghosted by someone I was meant to marry. That comment hit hard and stayed with me. Our wider friend group basically fractured. Megan stopped coming around entirely. Josh told me he couldn't handle being emotionally dumped on every time he saw Hannah. Even her roommate Claire moved out early because she said the apartment felt like a shrine to a man who wasn't there. Hannah noticed people pulling away and blamed them. She said everyone was shallow and impatient. She said I was different and begged me not to leave too. The breaking point for me happened last week. I had plans with my sister and told Hannah I wouldn't be available that evening. She showed up anyway, and when I didn't answer the door, she sat in her car outside my place for 2 hours texting me that she felt invisible. When I finally called her, she accused me of choosing everyone else over her pain. I snapped and told her this situation wasn't healthy anymore, and that I couldn't be her only support system. She went quiet after that, and then sent me a long message saying she didn't recognize me anymore, and that I had changed since Eric disappeared. She said she felt punished for loving someone deeply. I cried after reading it, because part of me understands her heartbreak, and part of me feels like I'm drowning alongside her. I don't know what the right move is. I don't know if Eric is alive, or if he just chose the most damaging way possible to leave. I don't know how to support someone who refuses any help but mine. I feel guilty for being frustrated, and I feel resentful for feeling guilty. I miss my friend. I miss conversations that weren't about a man who vanished 5 months ago. I don't want to abandon Hannah, but I also don't want to lose myself trying to save her from something I can't fix. I keep replaying everything, wondering if there was a moment I should have pushed harder or stepped back sooner. Right now, I'm just exhausted and sad and unsure how a disappearance that wasn't even mine ended up changing my life this much. Update: my friend disappeared into her missing boyfriend, and it's slowly wrecking our friendship. It's been a few weeks since I last wrote, and a lot has happened. Some of it in ways I didn't expect, and some of it in ways people warned me about. After the night Hannah sat in her car outside my place, we didn't talk for almost a week. That silence felt awful, but also strangely calm. I didn't realize how tense I'd been until my phone stopped buzzing every hour with messages about Eric. I finally reached out because the quiet didn't feel healthy either. I asked if she wanted to meet somewhere public and neutral. She agreed, and we met at a small coffee shop we used to love. She looked exhausted. She'd lost weight. Her hands shook when she held her cup. Seeing her like that reminded me why I cared so much in the first place. We talked for a long time. I told her I wasn't angry, but I was overwhelmed. I told her I loved her, but I couldn't be her only lifeline. I said the word boundary out loud, even though it felt stiff and uncomfortable. She cried and said she felt like everyone was abandoning her when she needed them most. I told her that needing help was real, but refusing all help, except one person, wasn't fair to either of us. That conversation went better than I expected until Eric came up again. She told me she had new information. Apparently his sister Lauren finally heard from him through a short message. According to Lauren, Eric said he was alive, safe, and didn't want contact with anyone right now. No details, no explanation, just that. Hearing that made something in my chest drop. 5 months of fear and waiting, and it turns out he was okay and just chose not to speak. Hannah reacted in a way that scared me. Instead of being angry or relieved, she clung to it as proof that he would come back eventually. She said if he took the time to message his sister, then he must still care. She said this was just a phase and she needed to stay strong. I tried gently saying that him choosing silence for this long was still a choice. She told me I was being negative again. After that meeting, she started texting me constantly with theories about why he disappeared. Work stress, mental health, a secret plan. Every theory ended with him returning. I reminded her of what we talked about and slowed my responses. That's when things escalated. She sent me a message one night saying she didn't feel safe being alone. I called her immediately and asked what she meant. She said she wasn't going to hurt herself, but she felt like she was losing her grip on reality. That sentence stuck with me. I stayed on the phone with her for hours, and afterward I realized I couldn't keep doing this without more support involved. The next day, I contacted her roommate Claire, who had moved out, and asked if she'd noticed similar things before leaving. Claire said yes, and that she'd been worried, but didn't know what to do without betraying Hannah's trust. Together, we decided to reach out to Hannah's older cousin, Rachel, who she's always been close to. Rachel took it seriously and thanked us for telling her. Rachel talked to Hannah and somehow got through to her in a way I couldn't. Hannah agreed to see a therapist, not happily and not fully convinced, but she agreed. When she told me that, I felt a wave of relief mixed with guilt. Relief that someone else was stepping in, and guilt that it couldn't just be me. Our friendship hasn't magically gone back to normal. Hannah still talks about Eric every time we speak. She still believes he'll come back. But the difference is that she no longer expects me to carry that belief for her. She apologized for the night outside my apartment and admitted she crossed a line. I apologized for snapping and for not being clearer sooner. Some friendships in our group are probably permanently changed. Megan hasn't reached out. Josh keeps his distance. I understand why. I'm trying not to resent Hannah for that, even though part of me does. I'm also trying not to hate Eric, even though another part of me absolutely does. Where things stand now is fragile but manageable. I see Hannah once a week instead of every day. I don't drop everything when she calls. I redirect conversations when they spiral. Sometimes she gets quiet and I can tell she's upset, but she doesn't lash out the way she used to. I don't know how this will end. I don't know if Eric will ever explain himself or if Hannah will ever fully let go of the idea of him. What I do know is that loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself piece by piece. I learned that the hard way. I'm still sad. I still worry about her. But for the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe again. Stories number 6. My uncle keeps calling me a girl because of my hair, and I finally snapped. I'm a 22-year-old guy named Tyler Monroe, and I honestly didn't think my hair would become a family issue, but here we are. I've always had thick hair, and during college, I decided to grow it out. Not in a flashy way or anything extreme. It's just longer on top and goes past my ears, and sometimes I tie it back. I like it. My friends like it. My girlfriend likes it. I feel more like myself with it. That should be the end of the story, but it wasn't. The problem is my uncle Frank Dawson. He's my mom's older brother, in his late 50s, loud, opinionated, and very proud of being what he calls old school. He's the type who thinks men should look one way and women another, and he never misses a chance to let people know his thoughts even when nobody asks. Growing up, I was told to just ignore him because that's how he is. The first comment happened about a year ago at a family cookout in my grandparents' backyard. I walked in, and before I even sat down, he laughed and said, "When did my niece get here?" Everyone laughed awkwardly. I smiled even though my face felt hot and said, "Very funny." My mom, Linda Monroe, shot him a look and said, "Knock it off, Frank." He held his hands up like he was joking and said, "I'm just teasing." I let it go because I didn't want to make a scene. That's kind of my role in the family. I keep the peace, but after that, it never stopped. Every single time I saw him, there was a comment. He'd call me sweetheart. He'd ask if I needed a hair tie like the girls. He'd say things like, "Wow, Tyler, you look prettier every time I see you." It always had this edge to it where I knew he was trying to get a reaction. At first, I tried humor. I'd say at least someone noticed. Or I'd joke back and call him Grandpa, even though he hates that. But the comments kept coming, and they started happening in front of more people. At Thanksgiving, he asked if I was going to borrow lipstick from my cousin Megan Harris. Megan told him to shut up, and he laughed and said people are too sensitive these days. What really bothered me wasn't just the jokes, it was the tone. It felt like he was questioning my masculinity over and over again, like he was trying to put me in my place. I've never been insecure about being a guy, but after a while, it starts to wear on you. I'd find myself dreading family events. I'd think about cutting my hair just so I wouldn't have to deal with him. I talked to my mom about it. She said she knew Frank could be a jerk and that she'd try to say something again. She also said he was from a different generation and didn't mean harm. That answer frustrated me because intent doesn't erase impact. I told her it made me feel disrespected. She hugged me and said she understood, but nothing really changed. The breaking point came at my cousin Jake Dawson's engagement party. It was a big event at a rented hall with extended family and friends. I wore a button-down shirt and had my hair tied back neatly. I felt good about how I looked. As soon as Uncle Frank saw me, he laughed loudly and said, "Well, don't you clean up, nice young lady." People nearby turned to look. I felt that familiar rush of embarrassment, but this time, something else came with it. Anger. I said, "Frank, cut it out." He smirked and said, "What I'm just saying, you look like a girl with that hair. You can't blame me for calling it like I see it." That's when I snapped. I raised my voice and said maybe if you spent less time obsessing over my appearance and more time minding your own business, you wouldn't sound like such a bitter old man. The room went quiet fast. He looked shocked and then angry. He said, "Don't talk to me like that." I said then, "Stop talking to me like I'm a joke." I told him I'd asked him multiple times to stop, and he kept doing it. I said my hair doesn't affect his life at all, and I'm tired of being disrespected at every family gathering. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop. I said if he couldn't treat me like an adult, then he could keep my name out of his mouth. My aunt Carol Dawson rushed over and told us both to calm down. My mom came up looking panicked. Frank said I was being dramatic and disrespectful. I said respect goes both ways. Then I walked outside because I felt like I was going to lose it completely. After that, the party felt ruined for me. Some family members avoided me. A few came up quietly and said they understood. My cousin Megan hugged me and said she was proud of me for finally saying something. My cousin Jake later texted saying he wished it hadn't happened at his party, but that he got why I was upset. When we got home, my mom told me Frank was furious and said I embarrassed him. She said she wished I'd handled it more calmly. That hurt because I felt like I'd been calm for over a year while he kept poking at me. My dad, Richard Monroe, backed me up and said Frank had it coming and that nobody should be bullied in their own family. Now things are tense. There's talk that I owe Frank an apology for snapping at him. He hasn't apologized to me. Not once. According to him, it was just jokes and I overreacted. I'm being painted as the one who caused drama, even though I'm the one who kept being targeted. I keep replaying it in my head, wondering if I should have handled it differently. Maybe I could have pulled him aside instead of snapping publicly. Maybe I could have walked away again. But part of me feels relieved that I finally stood up for myself. I'm tired of shrinking to make other people comfortable. I don't think having long hair makes me less of a man, and even if it did it, wouldn't give anyone the right to mock me. I just wanted basic respect from my own family, and I'm frustrated that setting a boundary turned into a bigger issue than the constant disrespect that led up to it. Update. My uncle keeps calling me a girl because of my hair, and I finally snapped. I didn't expect things to escalate as much as they did after the engagement party, but the fallout has honestly been more stressful than the confrontation itself. A few days after the party, my mom called me and said we needed to talk. I already knew what it was about because apparently Uncle Frank had been calling anyone who would listen and telling his version of the story. According to him, I attacked him out of nowhere, humiliated him in public, and disrespected an elder. None of the months of comments he made were mentioned at all. When I went over to my parents' house, my mom looked tired. She said Frank was demanding an apology and that my Aunt Carol felt hurt that her husband was spoken to that way. I told my mom again exactly what he'd been saying to me and how long it had been going on. I reminded her that she had personally heard some of it. She admitted that she had, but said she never thought it bothered me this much. That hurt because I told her it did. It felt like my feelings were being minimized to keep the peace. My dad was a lot more direct. He said Frank crossed the line a long time ago and that I had every right to defend myself. He said, just because someone is family doesn't mean they get a free pass to insult you. That helped more than I can explain. It was the first time I felt like someone older in the family fully had my back. A few days later, my Aunt Carol reached out to me directly. She asked if we could talk. I agreed, because I didn't want this to turn into a permanent family rift if it didn't have to. We met for coffee. She said Frank felt disrespected and embarrassed. I told her honestly that embarrassment was exactly how I'd felt for over a year every time he made those comments. I asked her if she would be okay with someone repeatedly calling her names and laughing it off as jokes. She didn't really answer that. She just said, Frank is stubborn and set in his ways. I told her I wasn't asking Frank to change who he is. I was asking him to stop commenting on my appearance and calling me a girl. That's it. I said if he could do that, we wouldn't have a problem. She said she would talk to him, but warned me that he doesn't like being challenged. That warning honestly said more about him than it did about me. About a week later, we had another family gathering for my grandmother's birthday. I debated not going at all, but I didn't want to avoid my entire family because of one person. I showed up nervous, but determined not to shrink myself. My hair was down this time because I refused to change anything just to make a point. When Uncle Frank arrived, the room got tense. He didn't say anything to me at first, which was honestly worse than his usual comments. He barely acknowledged me. Halfway through the party, he pulled me aside. He said I embarrassed him and that I owed him an apology. I told him calmly that I wasn't apologizing for standing up for myself. I said I would apologize for raising my voice if he could acknowledge that his comments were inappropriate and hurtful. He laughed and said I was proving his point by being sensitive. That's when I realized we weren't going to get anywhere. I told him that from now on, if he commented on my appearance or called me names, I would leave immediately and limit contact. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't emotional. I was clear. He rolled his eyes and walked away. Later that evening, he made another comment, quieter this time, but still loud enough for me to hear. He said something about me needing a brush like a girl. I didn't respond. I grabbed my jacket, hugged my grandmother, told my parents I loved them, and left. I could hear him scoff as I walked out. Driving home, I felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger that he still didn't get it. Relief that I finally followed through on a boundary instead of swallowing it like I always had. Since then, I've skipped 2 family events where he was present. Some relatives think I'm overreacting. Others have quietly told me they respect my decision. The most surprising thing is how much lighter I feel. I didn't realize how much stress I was carrying just anticipating his comments. I've stopped questioning my appearance. I've stopped wondering if I should change myself to avoid conflict. I've realized that keeping the peace at my own expense isn't peace at all. I don't know what the long-term outcome will be. Maybe Uncle Frank will never apologize. Maybe some family members will always see me as the one who caused trouble. But I've learned something important through all of this. Respect isn't automatic just because someone is older or related to you. And standing up for yourself doesn't make you disrespectful. It just means you finally decided you matter too. Stories number 7. My breaking point came when I realized I was romanticizing a man who did the bare minimum. I need to get this off my chest because if I don't say it somewhere, I'm going to keep gaslighting myself into thinking I'm the problem. I have spent the last 3 years romanticizing my male partner in ways that now feel embarrassing to admit. I told myself he was misunderstood. I told myself he showed love differently. I told myself that if I just communicated better, or stayed calmer, or asked nicer, things would change. I turned crumbs into full meals in my head, and I'm exhausted from it. I'm in my late 20s, and I've been with Daniel since my mid-20s. When we first got together, he was charming in a quiet way, not loud, not flashy. He said all the right things about being a good partner and wanting a future. He talked about growth and accountability and how his last relationship failed because they weren't on the same page. I ate that up. I thought, wow, here's a man who reflects. Looking back, I realized he talked about growth like a concept, not a practice. Early on, I noticed little things. He forgot dates. He didn't ask many questions about my life. When I talked about my job or my family, his eyes would glaze over. But when he talked about his stress or his goals, I listened and supported him fully. I told myself relationships aren't always equal every day. I told myself this was just a phase. I became the planner, the reminder, the emotional regulator. I remembered his mom's birthday. I reminded him to call his sister. I kept track of bills. I checked in on his moods. When he was distant, I asked if he was okay. When I was distant, he asked what was wrong with me. Somehow, his silence was understandable and mine was a problem. Every time I brought up feeling neglected, he'd say he didn't realize I felt that way and that he'd do better. And sometimes he did for a week or two. Flowers once, a nice text, a date he planned. I'd feel hopeful and relieved and tell myself, see, he does care. Then things would slide back to normal. I'd wait. I'd adjust. I'd lower my expectations quietly so I wouldn't seem demanding. I started romanticizing his potential instead of his reality. I told friends he's just bad at expressing emotions. I said he's trying in his own way. I defended him when they said I deserved more. I felt weirdly proud of being the understanding girlfriend. Like enduring made me mature. Like loving him harder would eventually unlock the version of him I believed existed. The breaking point wasn't one big dramatic fight. It was a random Tuesday. I had a terrible day at work. I called him and told him I was overwhelmed and close to tears. He said that sucks, and then immediately started talking about a video game issue he was dealing with. I remember holding the phone away from my ear and staring at the wall. Something in me just went quiet. Later that night, I asked him why he didn't check on me after I told him I was struggling. He looked genuinely confused. He said I didn't ask him to. That sentence hit me harder than any insult. I realized I had been carrying the emotional load for both of us, and he didn't even see it. I thought about all the times I anticipated his needs without being asked. All the times I softened my tone so he wouldn't shut down. All the times I apologized just to end an argument even when I didn't feel wrong. I realized I was in love with the idea of him becoming better, not the man standing in front of me. When I stopped filling in the gaps, everything became obvious. When I stopped reminding him, he forgot things. When I stopped initiating affection, it disappeared. When I stopped smoothing over tension, it just sat there. He told me I was acting distant. I told him I was tired. He said, from what? I didn't even know how to answer that without sounding like I was accusing him of something he wasn't ready to hear. The worst part is how long I blamed myself. I wondered if I was too sensitive, if I expected too much, if I was asking him to be someone he wasn't. Then I realized that wanting care, effort, and emotional presence isn't asking for too much. It's asking the right person. I'm done romanticizing male partners who benefit from my empathy while offering excuses in return. I'm done translating silence into depth and avoidance into mystery. I'm done praising basic respect like it's a rare gift. Love shouldn't feel like convincing someone to show up. I haven't ended things yet. I'm sitting with the clarity first. I'm noticing how peaceful it feels to stop over-explaining myself. I'm noticing how much energy I have when I'm not managing someone else's emotional comfort. I don't know exactly what comes next, but I know I can't unsee this. If someone has to be imagined into being a good partner, then they aren't one. Update: My breaking point came when I realized I was romanticizing a man who did the bare minimum. A lot has happened since I last wrote, and I needed time to sit with it before saying anything, because I didn't want to slip back into minimizing my own experience. After I posted, I didn't confront Daniel right away. I started doing something that felt almost unnatural at first, which was observing instead of fixing. I stopped anticipating his needs. I stopped reminding him about things. I stopped cushioning my words. I wanted to see what remained when I wasn't holding everything together. What remained was uncomfortable silence and confusion on his part. He noticed I wasn't as talkative. He noticed I wasn't initiating plans or affection. He asked if I was mad at him. I told him I wasn't mad and that I was just tired. That answer didn't satisfy him because it didn't give him something specific to fix quickly. He asked what he did wrong. I told him I wasn't interested in listing things anymore. That was new for both of us. A few days later, we finally sat down to talk. I told him calmly that I felt emotionally alone in the relationship and that I had been carrying most of the effort for a long time. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I didn't over-explain. I just stated it plainly. He listened, but I could tell he was more focused on responding than understanding. He said he didn't realize things were that bad. He said he thought we were fine because we didn't fight much. That's when I realized how differently we defined fine. For him, fine meant comfortable and low effort. For me, fine meant connected and cared for. I asked him what he thought partnership looked like. He talked about loyalty and not cheating and being there in emergencies. When I talked about emotional presence and daily effort, he looked overwhelmed. Not angry, just lost. He said he felt like no matter what he did, it was never enough. I told him that might be because what he did was sporadic and reactive instead of consistent. He went quiet. Then he asked if I wanted to break up. I told him I wanted to feel chosen without having to beg for it. He said he didn't know if he could be what I needed. That sentence hurt, but it was also the most honest thing he had said to me in a long time. For once, he wasn't promising to change or do better. He was admitting his limits. I realized that loving someone doesn't mean shrinking your needs to fit their capacity. It means being honest about whether those capacities align. We decided to take space, not a break with rules, just actual space. I stayed with a friend named Allison for a week. Being away from him was eye-opening. I didn't feel anxious. I didn't feel like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I slept better. I laughed more. I didn't check my phone constantly. That alone told me a lot. Daniel texted a few times, saying he missed me and that he was thinking a lot. He said he was trying to be more mindful. I appreciated the sentiment, but I noticed something important. His messages were still about his process, not about understanding mine. It wasn't malicious. It was just consistent with who he is. When I came back, we talked again. I told him I cared about him, but I didn't want to be in a relationship where I had to continuously translate my needs into something palatable. He said he didn't want to lose me, but he also didn't want to feel like a failure. I told him neither of us were villains here, but staying together out of fear would turn us into resentful versions of ourselves. We ended things quietly. No yelling. No dramatic final words. Just a long hug and a lot of sadness. I cried later, not because I doubted the decision, but because grieving something that almost worked still hurts. I also felt relief, and that scared me at first until I realized relief is information. Since then, I've been reflecting on how much I normalized emotional neglect by calling it peace, how I confused stability with fulfillment, how I internalized the idea that being low maintenance made me more lovable. I'm unlearning that now. Slowly. Gently. I'm not angry at Daniel. I don't think he's a bad person. I think he's someone who benefits from partners who do more than their share and doesn't question it because it works for him. I don't want to be that partner anymore. I'm learning to sit with my needs without apologizing for them. I'm learning that love shouldn't require me to disappear. I don't know what the future looks like yet, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm standing on solid ground instead of convincing myself that imbalance is normal. Stories number 8. My boyfriend likes to have me pretend it's huge. I am a 28-year-old woman living in Colorado, and I have been with my boyfriend, Jason, for almost 2 years now. We met through mutual friends at a backyard barbecue, and I liked him right away because he was funny, relaxed, and easy to talk to. We moved in together about 8 months ago, and most of the time, our relationship feels solid. This is awkward to write, but it has been sitting in my head for a while, and I do not really know who else to talk to about it. Jason has this thing he likes during intimate moments where he wants me to talk like he is way bigger than he actually is. He wants me to act amazed, surprised, and almost overwhelmed by it. He is not small, and I have never thought that about him. But he is also not some unrealistic fantasy version of a man either. He is just normal. At first, I thought it was kind of funny and harmless. He would say things like, "Tell me how big it is," and I would laugh and play along. I would say stuff like, "Wow, that's huge," in a joking tone. He seemed really into it, so I kept doing it. Over time, though, it stopped feeling like a joke. He started correcting me if I did not sound convincing enough. He would say, "No, like really sell it, or you don't sound impressed." That made me feel weird, like I was acting in a role instead of being myself. I tried asking him once why it mattered so much to him. He shrugged and said it just turned him on. He said it made him feel confident and powerful. I get that everyone has things that make them feel good about themselves, but I started wondering what it meant that he needed me to pretend. One night, after he reminded me again to act more impressed, I felt this knot in my stomach. I did not say anything in the moment, but afterward, while we were just lying there, I told him it made me feel strange sometimes. I said I did not like feeling like I had to lie or perform to make him feel okay. He got quiet and said he did not mean it like that. He said he just liked hearing it. Then he said something that stuck with me. He said, "I guess I've always felt kind of insecure about it. That changed how I saw the whole thing. It was not just a fantasy, it was tied to how he saw himself." Part of me felt sad for him. Part of me felt frustrated that I was being pulled into his insecurity without really choosing it. Since that talk, I have been stuck in this in-between place. Sometimes I still play along because I know it makes him feel good. Other times, I keep it more neutral, just being honest about how I feel instead of exaggerating. When I do that, he seems a little less excited, and I hate that I noticed that. I started questioning myself too. Am I being unsupportive by not playing along all the time? Or am I allowed to want to be real and not feel like I am acting in a script? I never had this issue in past relationships, so I do not have anything to compare it to. I talked to my best friend Lauren about it in a very vague way. I did not give details, but I told her my boyfriend wanted me to say things that did not feel true to me. She said, "You're not a therapist, and you're not an actress. You're his partner." That really stuck with me. I love Jason. He is kind to me in a lot of ways. He cooks dinner when I am tired. He listens when I rant about work. He makes me laugh when I am stressed. This is not a bad relationship. That is why this small thing feels so heavy, because it touches something deeper than it looks on the surface. Sometimes I worry that if I stop playing along, it will chip away at his confidence. Other times, I worry that if I keep doing it, I will slowly lose my own voice in our relationship. I do not want to be someone who just says what she thinks someone wants to hear. I am trying to figure out how to talk to him about this again in a way that is honest but not cruel. I do not want to shame him. I also do not want to keep pretending forever. I want us to be able to want each other as we really are, not as some exaggerated version. I keep thinking that real confidence should not need so much pretending. But I also know people are complicated, and love is not about perfection. Right now, I am just sitting with it, trying to understand my own feelings before I bring it up again. I want a relationship where we both feel wanted, but also where we both feel real. Update. My boyfriend likes to have me pretend it's huge. A few weeks after I wrote everything out, I realized I could not keep avoiding the conversation. Every time we were close, I felt this quiet pressure in my chest, like I was bracing myself for a line in a script I did not want to read anymore. I decided I would talk to Jason on a normal day, not in the middle of anything emotional or physical. One evening after dinner, we were sitting on the couch watching a show neither of us was really paying attention to. I muted the TV and told him I needed to talk about something important. He got nervous right away, which already told me he probably knew what it was about. I told him I cared about him and that this was not about trying to hurt him. I said sometimes when he asks me to exaggerate, it makes me feel like I am not allowed to just be honest. I said I do not want to feel like I am performing instead of connecting with him. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said he knew it was weird. He said he has compared himself to other guys his whole life, especially growing up with locker room talk and stupid jokes. He said even when he knows he is normal, he still feels like he is not enough. That hurt to hear, not in an angry way, but in a sad way. I told him I never thought he was not enough. I told him I am with him because I want him, not some imaginary version of him. I said I do not mind complimenting him, but I do mind lying or acting. He asked me if I would ever say things like that again. I said maybe sometimes, if it feels natural and fun, not like a requirement. I said I need to know I am allowed to just be real too. He admitted that sometimes he paid more attention to whether I said the right thing than to how I actually felt. He said that made him realize he might be using me to fix something inside himself that I cannot actually fix. That was one of the most honest conversations we have ever had. After that, things felt awkward for a little while. Not bad, just different. He stopped asking me to say those things. I noticed he seemed a little quieter during intimate moments, like he was overthinking everything. I made an effort to tell him what I genuinely liked and what felt good, without exaggerating. One night, he stopped and asked me, "Are you being real right now?" I said yes. He smiled in a way that felt more relaxed than I had seen in a while. He said that meant more to him than anything fake. We are not magically fixed. Sometimes I still feel him fishing for reassurance, and sometimes I still feel tempted to just say what I know will boost him fast. But now, when I feel that, I stop and think about whether I am being kind or just being easy. He also started doing something I did not expect. He started talking more about his insecurities in general, not just about his body. About work, about not feeling successful enough, about comparing himself to his friends. I think this one issue cracked open a lot more than either of us realized. There was a moment a few days ago that really stuck with me. We were lying in bed, just talking, and he said, "I want you to want me, not the idea of me." That felt like a big shift from where we started. I am still learning how to balance being supportive with being honest. I do not think love means fixing someone, but I do think it means walking next to them while they try to fix themselves. I also think it means not disappearing in the process. I do not know exactly where this will lead long term. But right now, I feel more like myself again. And I think he feels a little more like himself too, even if that self is still a work in progress. I am realizing that sometimes the smallest, weirdest issues in a relationship point to the biggest truths underneath. Stories number 9. My wife says I embarrassed her by hoarding food before her family visited, and now I don't know if I crossed a line. I'm a 34-year-old married guy living in Pennsylvania, and I never thought food would become the center of the biggest argument of my marriage so far. I'm writing this because I honestly don't know if I was trying to protect myself or if I acted petty and childish without realizing it. I feel like I need outside opinions because everyone in my real life is clearly taking sides. My wife Rachel is 33 and we've been married for 5 years. We don't have kids yet. Overall, our marriage is solid, but one issue we've always danced around is food. I have some long-standing digestive issues. Nothing life-threatening, but enough that certain foods mess me up badly. Greasy food, super spicy stuff, and some dairy products leave me miserable for days. Rachel knows this. I've explained it more times than I can count. Rachel, on the other hand, has a very different relationship with food. She grew up in a loud, close-knit family where food equals love. Big meals, heavy meals, lots of fried stuff, lots of cheese. When her family gets together, it's basically an eating event with talking on the side. Normally, day to day, we compromise. I cook most of my own meals. She cooks things she likes. We usually keep separate groceries for the most part. Where it gets complicated is when her family visits. Rachel's parents live in another state and usually come to stay with us twice a year. Her dad's name is Greg, and her mom's name is Sharon. She also has a younger brother named Kyle, who sometimes comes too. When they visit, everything changes. The fridge gets filled with food I cannot eat. I'm not exaggerating. It's lasagna, cream-based casseroles, fried chicken, sausage, buttery mashed potatoes, desserts loaded with dairy. In the past, when they visit, Rachel tells me I can just eat around it or order takeout. The problem is that the food they make takes over the entire kitchen. The fridge is packed. The stove is always in use. Even the smell makes my stomach turn sometimes. I've ended up skipping meals or eating crackers in my office just to avoid issues. Last year during their visit, I got so sick I had to miss work for 2 days. Rachel apologized at the time but still brushed it off as unfortunate timing. Fast forward to this year. Rachel told me her family would be visiting for 10 days. 10 days felt like an eternity to me. When she said it casually over dinner, I felt this knot form in my stomach. I asked her if we could plan meals so I'd have food I could safely eat. She said we'd figure it out and not to stress. That response didn't reassure me at all. A week before her family arrived, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I went grocery shopping alone. I bought foods I know I can eat without issues. Simple meals, grilled chicken, rice, vegetables, oatmeal, soups, lactose-free products. I also bought snacks and drinks I like. I labeled some of the containers with my name and put them in the freezer in the back of the fridge. I didn't think of it as hoarding. I thought of it as preparing. I wanted to make sure I could eat without pain for 10 days. Rachel noticed the groceries and immediately asked why there was so much food. I explained calmly that it was for me during her family's visit so I wouldn't get sick. She frowned and said it looked excessive. I told her I was just trying to be proactive. She dropped it, but clearly wasn't happy. The day her family arrived, the house instantly filled with noise and chaos. Greg brought bags of groceries with him. Sharon immediately started planning meals out loud. Kyle joked about how he couldn't wait to eat real food instead of whatever diet stuff I eat. I tried to laugh it off. The first few days went mostly fine. I cooked my meals early or late and stayed out of the kitchen during peak times. I ate my food quietly and didn't comment on what they were eating. I thought everything was under control. Then on the 4th day, I came home from work and noticed several of my labeled containers were gone. At first, I thought I was mistaken. I checked again. My frozen chicken was gone. My soup was gone. My lactose-free yogurt was gone. I asked Rachel about it privately in our bedroom. She admitted her mom used some of it for dinner because they ran out of space and thought it was communal food. I reminded her I labeled it and specifically said it was for me. Rachel shrugged and said it was just food and I could buy more. That hit a nerve. I told her I bought exactly enough to get me through the visit. She said I was being dramatic and selfish by claiming food while her family was here. That night I didn't eat dinner because what they made would have wrecked my stomach and my food was gone. The next morning, I went out and bought more food. This time, I went further. I bought shelf-stable meals and stored them in a box in my office. I bought a mini fridge and put it in my office closet. I didn't announce it, I just did it. Rachel found out that evening when she tried to grab a drink from the fridge and noticed I wasn't eating dinner again. She confronted me, and I told her I set aside food so I wouldn't get sick. She lost it. She said I was hoarding food like a doomsday prepper. She said it made her family feel unwelcome. She said her mom noticed the labels earlier and felt embarrassed. She accused me of acting like her family was a burden. I snapped back that her family's food choices were literally making me ill and no one seemed to care. I reminded her that I've suffered through past visits. I told her I was done sacrificing my health to avoid awkwardness. The argument escalated fast. Voices were raised. At one point, Greg knocked on the door to ask if everything was okay. Rachel told him everything was fine, but I could tell he knew it wasn't. Later that night, Rachel told me I humiliated her. She said I made her look like she couldn't provide for her husband. She said hiding food was childish and passive-aggressive. I told her ignoring my health needs was worse. Sharon pulled Rachel aside the next day and apparently told her that I was being rude and antisocial. Kyle made a joke at breakfast about me having a secret stash like a squirrel. Everyone laughed. I forced a smile and went back to my office. I felt like a guest in my own home. Rachel and I barely spoke for the rest of the visit. When her family finally left, the house was silent and tense. That night she told me she was deeply hurt. She said marriage means sharing and compromise, and that I failed at that. She said I should have just eaten smaller portions of their food or dealt with being uncomfortable for family. I told her being uncomfortable and being physically sick are not the same thing. I asked why my needs always come second when her family visits. She didn't have a real answer. Now we're at a standstill. She thinks I owe her and her family an apology. I feel like I was forced into a corner. I didn't stop anyone from eating. I didn't comment on their food. I just made sure I could eat safely. I'm honestly questioning myself now. Was it wrong to save up food just for me? Did I embarrass her by making it obvious? Should I have handled it differently? I love my wife, but I also feel like my health should matter. I don't know if I crossed a line or if this is a boundary I should have set a long time ago. Update. My wife says I embarrassed her by hoarding food before her family visited, and now I don't know if I crossed a line. A lot has happened since I first wrote this, and honestly, I didn't expect things to escalate the way they did. I took some time before writing this update because emotions were high and I wanted to make sure I was being clear instead of just venting again. The morning after I posted, Rachel and I were barely speaking. We were polite but cold. It felt like we were roommates instead of spouses. I decided we couldn't keep going like that, so I asked her if we could sit down and actually talk without interrupting each other. To my surprise, she agreed. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where her family had eaten every night during their visit. I told her I wasn't trying to embarrass her or make her family feel unwelcome. I told her I was scared of getting sick again and felt like my past experiences had taught me that I needed to take care of myself because no one else would. I reminded her of the time I missed work after her parents' last visit and how helpless I felt. She listened, but I could tell she was still defensive. She said she felt blindsided by the mini fridge and the food stash. She said it made her feel like I didn't trust her at all. I admitted that part of that was true. I told her that when she said we would figure it out later, my experience told me that later usually meant nothing changed. That's when things got more emotional. Rachel admitted that she feels torn every time her family visits. She said growing up, food was how love was shown, and refusing food was seen as rejection. She said her mom Sharon takes it personally when someone doesn't eat what she cooks. Rachel said she feels like she's constantly trying to keep the peace between me and her family, and that my food stash felt like a public declaration that I wouldn't even try. I told her I've been trying for years, and that trying has cost me my health. I asked her why keeping her mom comfortable mattered more than keeping me well. That question made her cry. Not defensive crying, but actual, quiet crying. She admitted that she didn't fully grasp how bad my symptoms were because I tend to downplay them. She said she thought I was just uncomfortable, not in real pain. I'll take responsibility for that part because I don't like complaining and I hate feeling like a burden. Later that day, something unexpected happened. Rachel told me Sharon had called her. Apparently, Sharon was still upset about the visit and specifically about the labeled food and the mini fridge. Sharon told Rachel she felt disrespected in her daughter's home and said she felt like I was treating her cooking as unsafe or dirty. Rachel told her mom the truth. She explained my digestive issues in detail. She told her about the missed work, the pain, and the anxiety. According to Rachel, there was a long pause on the phone. Sharon apparently said she didn't realize it was that serious and admitted she thought I was just being picky. I won't lie, hearing that stung, but it also felt validating. The next few days were awkward but calmer. Rachel and I agreed we needed actual rules and not vague promises. We talked about future visits. We agreed that from now on, before her family comes, we will plan meals together in advance. Rachel agreed that there needs to be designated fridge and freezer space that is clearly off limits for my food, and that she will communicate that directly to her family instead of leaving me to look like the bad guy. We also talked about boundaries. I told her I need her to back me up in front of her family, even if it feels uncomfortable. She said she understands now that avoiding conflict with them created conflict with me. A few days later, Rachel surprised me by asking if I would be open to talking directly with her parents on a video call. I was nervous, but agreed. Greg was quiet during the call, but Sharon did most of the talking. She apologized for using my food without asking. She said she didn't realize how specific my diet needed to be and admitted she assumed I was exaggerating. I told her calmly that I wasn't trying to insult her cooking and that I appreciated the effort she puts into feeding everyone. I explained that my body just doesn't cooperate and that I hate being the odd one out. It wasn't a magical moment, but it felt like a step forward. Kyle didn't apologize, but he did text me later saying he was sorry if his jokes crossed a line. I'll take that for what it's worth. As for Rachel and me, we're still working through it. This situation exposed a bigger issue about how decisions get made when her family is involved. I realized I've been quietly accommodating for years instead of setting firm boundaries. She realized she's been prioritizing keeping everyone else happy over addressing the problem directly. We decided to start couples counseling. Our first session is scheduled for next week. It wasn't my idea alone, and it wasn't hers alone. It felt mutual, which gives me hope. I'm still not sorry for making sure I could eat safely. I am sorry that it came to that point without clearer communication earlier. If I could go back, I might have pushed harder for a plan instead of silently preparing for the worst. But I also recognize that sometimes preparation is what you do when you don't feel heard. Right now, things are calmer. The mini fridge is still in my office, and Rachel hasn't asked me to remove it. In fact, she told me it might be a good permanent solution during visits. That felt like progress. I don't know what the long-term outcome will be, but for the first time in a while, I feel like my health is being taken seriously instead of brushed aside. That alone makes this whole mess feel a little less pointless. The weeks after that update have been quieter, but not in a comfortable way at first. It was the kind of quiet where you're both trying to act normal while carrying a lot of thoughts you're not sure how to say out loud yet. Rachel and I went through that phase for about a week before our first counseling session, and I won't lie, I was nervous walking into it. I kept wondering if I was about to be told by a professional that I was selfish or inflexible or somehow in the wrong for protecting my health. The therapist, her name is Melissa, asked us to explain the situation from our own perspectives. Listening to Rachel talk without interrupting was harder than I expected. She explained how deeply ingrained food is in her family culture and how growing up, refusing food meant rejecting love. She talked about feeling like she was constantly translating between two worlds and failing at both. Hearing it laid out like that helped me understand where her defensiveness came from, even if I still didn't agree with how she handled things. When it was my turn, I talked about how powerless I felt during past visits. I explained the physical symptoms in detail instead of glossing over them. I admitted how anxious I get when I feel like I'm going to be trapped in a situation where eating will hurt me. Melissa focused on the word trapped and asked me to expand on that. That's when it hit me that this wasn't just about food. It was about feeling like I didn't have a choice in my own home. Melissa helped us reframe the situation. She said boundaries aren't punishments and accommodations aren't insults. That sentence stuck with both of us. She also pointed out that my food planning wasn't hoarding, it was self-management, and that Rachel's discomfort came from feeling excluded rather than from any actual harm being done. After that session, Rachel and I had a long conversation at home. She admitted she'd been minimizing my needs because acknowledging them fully would mean confronting her family, something she's avoided her entire life. I admitted that I'd stopped trusting her to advocate for me and chose silence and preparation instead of conflict. Neither of those choices helped us feel like a team. Something shifted after that. It wasn't dramatic, but it was noticeable. Rachel started asking questions instead of making assumptions. She asked what foods are safest for me and which ones are negotiable. She asked how she could help during future visits instead of telling me to just figure it out. Those questions meant more to me than any apology could have. About a month later, Sharon called again. This time, she asked to speak to me directly. I was hesitant, but agreed. She told me she'd been thinking a lot about what Rachel said and admitted she has a habit of taking things personally. She said she didn't fully understand digestive issues because, in her mind, pain was something you push through. Hearing that helped me understand her reactions even if it didn't excuse them. She asked if there were any dishes she could make that would be safe for me next time. That was the first time she'd ever asked. I gave her a few suggestions, nothing fancy, just simple meals. She sounded relieved, like she'd been afraid I would reject everything outright. That conversation didn't fix everything, but it took some of the edge off. Kyle hasn't changed much, but I've stopped expecting him to. Greg remains quiet but polite. I've learned that not everyone needs to fully understand in order to respect a boundary. They just need it to be clearly stated and consistently enforced. Rachel and I are still in counseling, and we've uncovered more than just a food issue. We're talking about how decisions get made, how conflict is avoided, and how resentment builds when things aren't addressed early. It's uncomfortable work, but it feels necessary. The mini fridge is now an accepted part of our household. It's not hidden anymore. It's just there. During a small dinner we hosted for friends, Rachel even pointed it out casually and explained why it's helpful. No embarrassment, no defensiveness. That moment meant more to me than she probably realizes. Looking back, I don't think this was ever about me saving food. It was about me saving myself from another situation where I felt ignored. I wish it hadn't taken something so small yet so visible to force these conversations, but I also recognize that sometimes conflict is the price of clarity. I don't feel guilty anymore for choosing my health. I also don't feel as angry as I did before. I feel more grounded. Rachel and I are still learning how to balance each other's needs, but for the first time in a long while, it feels like we're actually facing the problem together instead of standing on opposite sides of it. If anything comes out of this, I hope it's that we've learned that love doesn't mean enduring pain in silence, and that setting boundaries doesn't mean pushing people away. Stories number 10. My sister-in-law said she should take my baby since I never wanted kids, and I kicked her out. I never thought I would be the kind of person posting something like this, but I feel like my brain is spinning, and I need outside perspective. I'm a first-time mom in my late 20s living in the US, and I gave birth to my son a few months ago. My pregnancy was not planned. I was very open for most of my adult life about not wanting kids. I built my career around that idea. I enjoyed my freedom, and I never imagined myself as a mom. Then life happened, and everything changed very fast. When I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I cried for days. I talked it through with my husband Mark, who has always wanted kids. We had some very hard and very honest conversations. I decided to go through with the pregnancy because once it was real, I realized I didn't want to give the baby up, and I didn't want to end it either. I was scared, but I committed fully. I read books. I went to appointments. I did the work to mentally prepare, even though it didn't come naturally to me at first. My son was born healthy, and from the moment I held him, something shifted. I won't lie and say it was instant bliss, because it wasn't. It was overwhelming and exhausting and terrifying. But I loved him. I still love him more than I knew was possible. I'm learning every day, and I'm doing my best. Enter my sister-in-law, Amanda. She's married to Mark's older brother, Jason. Amanda has always made comments about how I used to say I didn't want kids. Even during my pregnancy, she would joke about it. She'd say things like, "Wow, I never thought I'd see you with a bump," or "Guess miracles happen." I didn't love those comments, but I brushed them off. Amanda has been struggling with infertility for years. I know that. I've always tried to be sensitive to it. I didn't complain about pregnancy symptoms around her. I didn't overshare. I thought I was being respectful. But after my son was born, her behavior changed. She started coming over constantly. At first, I appreciated the help. She would hold the baby, fold laundry, bring food. Then it became possessive. She referred to my son as her baby more than once. She'd say things like, "He looks just like Jason's side of the family," or "He feels so natural in my arms." It made me uncomfortable, but again, I didn't want to hurt her feelings, so I stayed quiet. The comments escalated. One day while my son was crying and I was struggling to calm him, Amanda sighed and said maybe he senses that motherhood doesn't come naturally to you. That hurt. Another time she said, "You always said you didn't want kids, so it must be hard pretending now." I finally told her to stop bringing that up because it wasn't fair and it wasn't true anymore. She laughed it off. The breaking point happened last week. Amanda was over while Mark was at work. The baby had a rough night and I was exhausted. I mentioned that I was tired and overwhelmed. Not that I regretted my son, just that I was tired. Amanda looked at me very seriously and said something I can't get out of my head. She said, "Maybe this is why things happen the way they do. Some people are meant to be moms and some aren't. You never wanted kids anyway. Maybe it would be better for everyone if he was with someone who truly wants him." Then she said she would gladly take him and raise him as her own. I honestly felt like the air left the room. I asked her what she meant, and she doubled down. She said she was just being realistic. She said I didn't plan this baby, and she's been praying for one for years. She said she could give him the life he deserves without resentment. Something snapped in me. I told her to get out of my house. I told her she crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. I said she doesn't get to decide whether I deserve my own child. She tried to backtrack and say she didn't mean it that way and that she was emotional. I told her to leave now. She left crying, and an hour later, my phone blew up. Jason called me furious. He said I was cruel and heartless and that Amanda was just speaking from pain. My mother-in-law called and said I should be more understanding of Amanda's infertility and that kicking her out was extreme. Even Mark was shocked when he came home and heard the story. He supports me, but he also said Amanda probably didn't mean it literally and that emotions are high. But I can't shake how violated I feel. I trusted her around my baby. I let her into my home when I was vulnerable. The idea that she could look at my child and think he'd be better off without me makes my stomach turn. It makes me question every interaction we've had since he was born. Now the family is divided. Some say I overreacted. Some say I should apologize for yelling. Others are quietly on my side but don't want drama. Amanda hasn't apologized. She sent a message saying she hopes I find peace with my choices, and that was it. I keep replaying it all in my head. I wonder if I missed red flags. I wonder if my past words about not wanting kids gave her permission to think this way. I wonder if I was too harsh, or if I did exactly what I needed to do to protect my child and myself. All I know is that I am his mother. I may not have planned this life, but I chose it, and I show up every day. And the thought of letting someone who questioned that stay in my home felt impossible. I don't know how to move forward with my in-laws after this, but I also don't know how I could pretend nothing happened. Update: my sister-in-law said she should take my baby since I never wanted kids, and I kicked her out. It's been a few weeks since everything blew up, and I honestly didn't expect the fallout to be this heavy or this complicated. After I kicked Amanda out, I spent the rest of that day shaking and crying while holding my son. I kept checking his face like I needed to remind myself that he was real and that he was mine. When Mark got home that night, We talked for hours. He apologized for not shutting things down sooner when Amanda made comments in the past. He admitted he thought she was just awkward and grieving and didn't realize how deep it had gone. The next day, Mark called his brother Jason. That conversation did not go well. Jason doubled down and said Amanda was misunderstood. He said she would never actually try to take our baby and that I took her words too literally. Mark told him that even suggesting it was unforgivable. Jason accused me of weaponizing motherhood against someone who can't have kids. That phrase stuck with me because it felt so backwards. I wasn't weaponizing anything. I was defending myself. A few days later, my mother-in-law asked if we could all sit down and talk it out. Against my better judgment, I agreed, because I thought maybe hearing Amanda explain herself would help. We met at their house. Amanda cried almost immediately. She said she never meant to imply I was unfit. She said she was projecting her own pain. She said when she sees my son, it reminds her of everything she doesn't have. She admitted she thinks about what it would be like to raise him, but claimed it was just a thought, not a plan. I listened quietly and then told her something I hadn't said out loud yet. I told her that intent doesn't erase impact. I told her that when someone suggests taking your child, even hypothetically, it changes how safe you feel around them forever. I told her I no longer trust her alone with my son, and that wasn't a punishment. It was a boundary. That did not go over well. My mother-in-law said I was being extreme and letting fear control me. Jason said I was tearing the family apart. Amanda cried harder and asked how she was supposed to heal if she was shut out. I told her healing doesn't come at the expense of my child or my mental health. Mark backed me up completely, which caused even more tension. Since then, we've gone low contact. Amanda has not been allowed over. If there are family gatherings, we either don't attend or we leave early. Some relatives have quietly reached out to say they understand, but don't want to get involved. Others have made passive comments about forgiveness and family unity. I've learned very quickly who actually respects boundaries and who just wants things to look normal again. What surprised me most was how much this stirred up my own insecurity. Amanda's words reopened every fear I had during pregnancy, every doubt about whether I was enough. I started second-guessing myself constantly. Was I doing enough? Was I bonding correctly? Was I too tired? Too irritable? Too inexperienced? I finally talked to my doctor about it and started seeing a therapist. That decision alone has helped more than I can explain. Through therapy, I realized something important. I am allowed to grow into motherhood without having my past used against me. Not wanting kids at one point in my life does not mean I am unworthy of the child I have now. People change. Circumstances change. Love changes you. Amanda sent one more message recently saying she feels like I've erased her from our lives. I didn't respond right away. When I did, I told her that I hope she finds peace and support, but until there's real accountability and respect for my role as a mother, nothing changes. She hasn't replied. It still hurts. I grieve the relationship I thought we could have. I grieve the village I imagined around my son. But I also feel stronger, more grounded, more protective in a way that feels right. I no longer question whether kicking her out was the right move. In that moment, I chose my child and myself. If that makes me the villain in someone else's story, I can live with that. What I couldn't live with is ignoring my instincts and letting resentment and entitlement sit quietly in the room with my baby. Final update. My sister-in-law said she should take my baby since I never wanted kids, and I kicked her out. A lot of time has passed since the last update, and I needed that distance before I could even think clearly about everything that happened. Life didn't suddenly calm down, but it slowly settled into a new shape. One that feels quieter and more honest, even if it isn't perfect. After we went low contact, things stayed tense for months. Family gatherings became awkward negotiations. Who would be there? How long we would stay? Whether Amanda would try to approach me or the baby. For a while, Mark and I chose to skip most events altogether. It hurt him more than he admitted at first, but he never pushed me to change my mind. That meant more to me than any apology ever could. Amanda eventually sent a longer message. Not a quick emotional text, but something clearly thought through. She admitted that what she said came from jealousy and grief, and that she had crossed a line she couldn't undo. She acknowledged that she had been imagining a life with my son that was never hers to imagine. She said she was starting therapy herself. I appreciated the honesty, but I didn't feel relief. I felt cautious. I replied calmly. I told her I accepted the apology, but forgiveness didn't mean immediate access or trust. I told her that being around my child was a privilege, not a coping mechanism. I told her that any relationship going forward would have to respect that completely. She said she understood. Time will tell if she truly does. What surprised me most is how much stronger I feel now compared to the person I was when this started. Back then, I was exhausted, insecure, and desperate to keep the peace. I thought being a good mother also meant being endlessly accommodating. Now I know better. Being a good mother sometimes means being firm and uncomfortable and letting other people be upset. My relationship with Mark is actually better than before. We communicate more clearly. We protect each other more intentionally. He's been vocal with his family about where we stand, and that this is not just my boundary, but ours. Watching him step fully into that role made me realize how much we've both grown since becoming parents. As for Amanda, there is polite distance now. We've been in the same room a few times. She keeps her space. She doesn't refer to my son as hers or make comments about my past. That's progress. I don't know if we'll ever be close again, and I've made peace with that. Not every relationship is meant to survive this kind of fracture. The biggest change is internal. I no longer let my old statements define me. I no longer feel the need to justify why I deserve my child. I don't flinch when motherhood feels hard. I don't hear her voice in my head questioning whether I belong here. I know I do. My son is thriving. He laughs easily. He reaches for me when he's tired. He settles when I hold him. Those quiet moments matter more than any opinion anyone else has ever had about my life choices. Looking back, I don't regret kicking her out. I don't regret drawing a line. That moment taught me something I'll carry forever. Protecting your child sometimes means disappointing adults, and that is not something I will ever apologize for again. Stories number 11. My mother-in-law wore white to my wedding, so I made a jacket of shame. I'm a 30-year-old woman named Rachel Whitmore, and I never imagined my wedding would turn into a lesson on boundaries, embarrassment, and how far someone can push before you finally snap. I've been with my husband Andrew Whitmore for 6 years and married for just under 3 months now. This story has been sitting in my chest since the wedding, and I need to get it out because every time I think about it, I still feel my jaw tighten. From the moment Andrew proposed, one person made everything harder than it needed to be. His mother, Deborah Whitmore. Deborah has always been the kind of woman who needs to be the center of attention in every room. She talks loudly, interrupts people, and somehow makes every conversation circle back to her sacrifices, her opinions, and her experiences. Andrew warned me early on that she could be difficult, but I thought I could handle it with patience and kindness. The first red flag came during dress shopping. I invited my mom, Susan Whitmore, my sister Claire Whitmore, and Deborah because I was trying to be inclusive. Deborah showed up late wearing a cream-colored dress and immediately started commenting on every gown I tried on. She said one made me look washed out. Another was too tight. Another made me look bigger than I was. Then she casually said that she already had a beautiful white outfit picked out for the wedding because white looked best on her skin tone. I laughed awkwardly and said guests don't usually wear white to weddings. She smiled and said, "Oh, I'm not just a guest. I'm the mother of the groom." My mom immediately jumped in and said that traditionally white is reserved for the bride. Deborah shrugged and said traditions are outdated. After that moment, I was very clear. I told her politely but firmly that I was not comfortable with anyone wearing white or off-white to my wedding. Andrew backed me up. He had a separate conversation with her where he told her the same thing. She smiled, nodded, and said she understood. I believed her because I wanted to. As the wedding got closer, she kept dropping comments. She said she found a champagne dress, but it photographed very light. She said ivory wasn't technically white. She sent me photos of dresses asking my opinion, and every single one was some shade of white, cream, ivory, or beige. Each time I said no. Each time she acted confused. 2 weeks before the wedding, Andrew called her and asked directly what color dress she was wearing. She said don't worry about it. That answer made my stomach drop. I told Andrew I was worried she was going to show up in white anyway. He told me if she did, he would handle it. I trusted him and focused on getting through the last stressful weeks. The wedding day arrived, and for the first few hours, everything was perfect. The venue was beautiful. The flowers were exactly what I wanted. I was nervous, but happy. While I was getting ready, my bridesmaid, Lauren Kim, came into the room looking pale. She said, "Rachel, you need to see this." She showed me a photo someone had taken in the lobby. Deborah had arrived wearing a full-length white lace dress with subtle beading. It looked like a wedding gown. Not cream, not ivory, white. I felt something in me go cold. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I was furious in a very quiet way. Andrew was told immediately, and he went to confront her. According to him, she said she didn't think it would be a big deal and that she deserved to look nice too. She said people would obviously know who the real bride was. I had a choice in that moment. I could let it go and feel humiliated on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, or I could finally stop being polite. I chose the second option. One of my friends, Megan Price, had joked weeks earlier about having a backup plan in case Deborah pulled something. She had brought an oversized bright red jacket with the word "Mother of the Groom" printed on the back in white letters as a joke. It was meant to make people laugh if Deborah wore something inappropriate. In that moment, the joke became a solution. I told Andrew what I wanted to do. He hesitated for about 2 seconds and then said okay. We had a wedding coordinator named Jessica Allen who was amazing. She approached Deborah calmly and told her that since she had chosen to wear white against the couple's wishes, she would need to wear the jacket during the ceremony and reception or leave. Deborah laughed at first thinking it was a joke. Then she realized it wasn't. She argued. She cried. She said I was trying to humiliate her. I said quietly that she had already tried to humiliate me. I told her she could wear the jacket or go home. Those were the only options. She chose to wear the jacket. She sat in the front row wearing a bright red jacket that clashed spectacularly with her white dress. People stared. People whispered. A few people snickered. Some people asked her what happened, and she had to explain over and over that she wore white to her son's wedding and was told to cover it. The irony was not lost on anyone. The rest of the wedding went beautifully. I focused on Andrew. I laughed. I danced. I enjoyed myself. Every time I saw the jacket out of the corner of my eye, I felt a strange sense of calm. For once, I wasn't the one swallowing discomfort to make her comfortable. After the wedding, the fallout was immediate. Deborah told the family I intentionally embarrassed her. She said I ruined her experience. Some of Andrew's relatives agreed with her and said I went too far. Others said she got what she deserved. My parents were fully on my side. My dad, Michael Whitmore, said if she didn't want attention, she shouldn't have worn a wedding dress to someone else's wedding. Andrew and I had long conversations about it afterward. He admitted that part of him felt guilty, but another part of him felt relieved that someone finally stood up to her. He said he had spent his whole life managing her emotions and watching everyone else bend around her. He said watching me draw a line made him realize how unhealthy that dynamic was. We are now low contact with Deborah. She still hasn't apologized. She says I owe her one. I don't agree. I didn't force her to wear white. I didn't force her to ignore multiple warnings. I didn't force her to choose attention over respect. Sometimes I wonder if I could have handled it differently. Then I remember how clear I was, how many chances she had, how intentional her choice was. The jacket didn't create the problem, it just exposed it. Did you know that many wedding etiquette rules exist less for tradition and more to prevent power struggles between families? Because ceremonies have historically been emotional flashpoints for control and status. I didn't make a jacket of shame to be cruel. I made it to protect my peace on a day that only happens once. And if that makes me the villain in her story, I can live with that. Update: my mother-in-law wore white to my wedding, so I made a jacket of shame. I didn't expect the situation to keep unfolding after the wedding, but it turns out the jacket was just the beginning of the consequences. About a week after the honeymoon, Andrew got a long voicemail from his mother that he didn't listen to right away. When he finally did, he put it on speaker and we both sat there in silence. She accused me of humiliating her on purpose, turning the family against her, and poisoning Andrew against his own mother. She said I had shown my true colors and that she would never forget what I did to her. There was no apology anywhere in that message, just anger and blame. Andrew called her back and told her that the real issue wasn't the jacket. He told her the issue was that she was told repeatedly not to wear white, and she did it anyway. He told her that if she wanted a relationship with us moving forward, she needed to acknowledge that she crossed a boundary. She laughed and said boundaries are an excuse people use to be disrespectful. That was the moment Andrew went very quiet and said, "Then, I guess we're done for now." He hung up and stared at the wall for a long time afterward. Word spread through the family quickly. His Aunt Patricia Whitmore posted a vague message on Facebook about younger generations having no respect for elders. Andrew's cousin, Emily Whitmore, commented, agreeing with her. People started unfriending me. I didn't engage. I didn't post. I didn't defend myself publicly. Anyone who mattered already knew the full story. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Deborah showed up at our apartment unannounced. She was crying and holding a garment bag. I didn't let her in at first. Andrew stepped outside to talk to her. I could hear raised voices through the door. Eventually he came back in and asked if I was willing to talk. I agreed, but only if we all stayed calm. She came in and sat stiffly on the couch. She pulled the dress out of the bag and said she wanted it altered and dyed another color so she could wear it to another event. She said she had spent a lot of money on it and didn't want it to go to waste. She still didn't apologize. She said she didn't think it would hurt me that much and that she didn't expect me to react the way I did. I told her quietly that the pain wasn't just about the dress. It was about feeling ignored and disrespected during a moment that was supposed to be about Andrew and me. I told her I felt like she tried to compete with me on my own wedding day. She looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Andrew told her that until she could genuinely apologize to me and respect our boundaries, there would be distance between us. She left shortly after that. No hug, no resolution, just an awkward goodbye. Since then, we've gone low contact. Holidays have been separate. Family group chats are quieter. Some relatives still think I went too far. Others have started telling stories about similar things she's done over the years and how they wish they had handled it differently. The most surprising part of all of this has been Andrew. He's more confident now. He speaks up faster. He doesn't immediately try to smooth things over when his mother is involved. He told me that seeing someone stand up to her without falling apart changed something in him. He said it made him realize that love doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes I still feel a twinge of guilt when I think about the jacket. I wonder if there was a softer way. Then I remember that softness was the language I used for months, and it didn't work. Clear consequences did. I don't know if Deborah and I will ever have a close relationship. I'm okay with that. I didn't marry her. I married Andrew. Our marriage feels stronger now because we learned early that we are a team and that protecting our peace matters more than keeping up appearances. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that boundaries only feel cruel to the people who benefit from you not having any. Final update. My mother-in-law wore white to my wedding, so I made a jacket of shame. It's been several months now, and enough time has passed that I can finally see the full shape of what that day changed. Things didn't explode the way some people predicted. There was no dramatic family cutoff announcement or screaming match that ended everything. Instead, it was quieter and in some ways harder. The distance just settled in and became real. Deborah did eventually apologize, but not in the way I think most people imagine. It came in the form of a handwritten card mailed to our apartment. No call, no visit, just a few carefully chosen sentences. She wrote that she was sorry for any hurt caused and that she never intended to take attention away from our wedding. She said she felt overwhelmed by feeling pushed aside as Andrew built his own family. She did not mention the jacket at all. She did not acknowledge that she was told not to wear white. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't full accountability. But it was the closest thing we were likely to get. Andrew asked me how I felt about responding. I told him I didn't want to reopen the wound, but I also didn't want to pretend nothing happened. We sent a short reply together. We thanked her for the apology. We said we hoped, moving forward, there would be mutual respect for boundaries. We didn't add anything else. No blame, no sarcasm, just clarity. Since then, contact has been limited, but civil. We see her at larger family events. She dresses appropriately now. She doesn't make comments about my appearance or our choices. She's more reserved around me, which I can live with. There's a formality there that didn't exist before, but there's also peace. Some relatives have quietly come around. Aunt Patricia stopped posting passive-aggressive messages and even invited us to dinner. She didn't bring up the wedding at all. Andrew's cousin Emily apologized for jumping to conclusions and admitted she only heard Deborah's version at first. Not everyone has changed their mind, but enough have that it no longer feels like we're on the outside. As for me, something unexpected happened. I stopped second-guessing myself. That constant internal debate about whether I was being too harsh or too dramatic finally faded. I realized that the reason the jacket stood out so much was because it broke a pattern that had existed for decades. People weren't used to Deborah facing consequences. They were used to accommodating her. When that didn't happen, it shocked the system. Andrew and I are doing well. Really well. We talk more openly now. We're quicker to check in with each other when something feels off. We've had conversations about future boundaries, kids, holidays, and what we want our family culture to look like. There's a sense of partnership that deepened because we went through something uncomfortable together and didn't let it divide us. Do I regret the jacket? No, I don't. It wasn't about humiliation. It was about drawing a line in a moment where words had already failed. I didn't ruin my wedding day. I protected it. And I learned that standing up for yourself doesn't always lead to chaos. Sometimes it leads to clarity. The jacket is still in our closet. Bright red. Folded neatly. I don't know if we'll ever need it again. I hope not. But it's a reminder that boundaries aren't about control. They're about respect. And once you stop apologizing for having them, life gets a lot quieter in the best possible way. Stories number 12. My refusal to move in with my mother-in-law is tearing my marriage apart. I am posting here because I am stuck between feeling practical and feeling like a terrible person, and I do not know which one is more accurate anymore. On paper, the solution everyone keeps pushing makes sense. In real life, it feels like I am being asked to give up my sanity and pretend it is a favor. I am married to my husband, and we have been together for several years. We both work full-time, and until recently, we were doing fine financially. Not thriving, but stable. Then a series of things happened almost back to back. Rent went up. My car needed expensive repairs. My husband's hours were cut temporarily. Suddenly, money became a constant background stress instead of an occasional worry. That is when my mother-in-law suggested we move in with her. She has a large house and lives alone. She framed it as a win for everyone. Cheaper living expenses for us. Company and help around the house for her. She even offered to watch our child if we needed it, which immediately made my husband enthusiastic about the idea. From the outside, I understand why people think I am being difficult. Living with her would save us a lot of money. We could pay down debt faster. We could breathe a little. Everyone keeps telling me this would only be temporary. Just a year, maybe two. The problem is that I know his mother very well. She is not abusive or cruel. She is something harder to explain. She is controlling in quiet ways. She has strong opinions about how things should be done, and she believes experience automatically makes her right. She does not yell. She sighs. She does not demand. She hints. She keeps score. When we visit her now, I already feel on edge. She comments on how I cook. She rearranges things when I am not looking. She makes little remarks about parenting choices that sound harmless but add up over time. My husband brushes it off and says that is just how she is. He says she means well. He tells me I am too sensitive. I try to imagine what it would be like to live there full time, sharing a kitchen, sharing common spaces, raising my child under the same roof as someone who constantly second guesses me, having no real place to decompress, no space that is truly ours. The thought makes my chest feel tight. I told my husband I was not comfortable with it. I suggested other options, downsizing, picking up extra work temporarily, cutting back harder, even moving to a smaller place farther away. He listened, but I could tell he was frustrated. He kept coming back to the same point. Why struggle when help is being offered? The conversations became more frequent and more tense. He started framing my refusal as stubbornness. He said I was letting pride get in the way of logic. He said families are supposed to help each other. He said his mother would be offended if we turned her down. That last part stuck with me. Not that it would be hard for us. Not that it would create tension in our marriage. But that his mother's feelings would be hurt. I asked him where my feelings fit into this. He said they mattered, but that sometimes adults have to make sacrifices. I feel like I am the only one being asked to sacrifice anything. He sees this as a financial decision. I see it as a daily quality of life decision. I would be the one home more. I would be the one navigating the subtle criticisms. I would be the one constantly feeling like a guest in someone else's space. We even talked about boundaries. He promised he would stand up for me if she crossed lines. I did not say this out loud, but I do not believe him. I have seen how he shuts down when his mother is involved. He avoids conflict with her at all costs. I am the one who ends up adapting. The situation escalated when his mother started contacting me directly. She told me she heard I was hesitant and wanted to reassure me. She said she would give us privacy. She said she would help with chores and childcare. She said it would be nice to have the family together. Her tone was kind, but there was an undercurrent of expectation. I thanked her and told her I appreciated the offer, but needed time to think. After that, my husband was upset. He said I embarrassed him by not agreeing right away. He said she was trying to be generous. I said generosity that comes with pressure does not feel generous. Now we are at a standstill. He thinks I am being unreasonable and short-sighted. I think he is underestimating the emotional cost. Friends and relatives are divided. Some tell me I should suck it up for the sake of financial stability. Others quietly admit they would not want to live with her either. I have even questioned myself. Am I letting fear dictate my choices? Am I prioritizing comfort over responsibility? Am I failing as a partner by not doing what seems logical? Then I remember how I feel after a single weekend visit, and I wonder how I would survive months or years of that. I am not saying my mother-in-law is a villain. I am saying she is not someone I want to live with. I believe that is a valid boundary. But the way everyone is reacting makes me feel selfish and ungrateful. My husband says this decision could impact our future. He says the financial relief would reduce stress and help our marriage. I worry it would do the opposite. I worry resentment would grow quietly until it poisoned everything. I want to be practical, but I also want to protect my mental health and my role as a parent. I do not want my child growing up watching me constantly defer to someone else in my own home. So here I am asking people who do not know us and have no reason to take sides. Am I wrong for refusing to move in with my mother-in-law even though it would be cheaper and helpful? Or is it reasonable to say no to a solution that feels like it would cost me more than it saves? Update: my refusal to move in with my mother-in-law is tearing my marriage apart. I did not expect my original post to sit with me the way it did, but reading through reactions and then watching things unfold in my own life made it impossible to ignore what was really happening. Since then, the situation has moved forward, whether I was ready for it or not, and I need to get it all out in one place because it has been emotionally exhausting. After the last argument, my husband and I agreed to take a few days to cool off and think. I hope that space would help him see that this was not me being stubborn or dramatic, but about long-term well-being. When we sat down again, he came in with numbers. He had spreadsheets and estimates and timelines. He showed me how much we would save each month and how quickly we could be out of debt if we moved in with his mother. I understood the math. I really did, but none of it addressed what I kept trying to explain. When I brought up boundaries again, he said we would set clear rules before moving in. I asked him to be specific. He said things like respecting our parenting and giving us privacy. When I asked what would happen if those boundaries were crossed, he hesitated and said we would talk about it. That was the answer I expected, and the one that made my heart sink. A few days later, his mother invited us over for dinner. I suspected it was not just a casual meal, and I was right. At some point, she brought up the idea again and spoke as if it was already decided. She talked about which room we could take and how she could reorganize the house to make space for us. She mentioned how nice it would be for our child to grow up with grandma close by. Everyone looked at me like I was the final obstacle. I tried to stay calm and said we were still discussing it and that I had concerns. She smiled and said concern is normal, but that families make things work. She said she had lived with her own in-laws early in her marriage and survived. That word survived stuck with me for the rest of the night. On the drive home, my husband was quiet and then suddenly angry. He said I embarrassed him by not being enthusiastic. He said his mother was trying to help, and I was making it awkward. I told him I felt cornered and unheard. He said I was focusing on feelings instead of solutions. That sentence broke something open between us. For the first time, I said out loud that moving in with his mother felt like I would be giving up my autonomy. I said I was afraid of becoming a guest in my own life. I said I was afraid of resenting him. He said he was already starting to resent me for not being willing to do this for our family. That night, neither of us slept much. The next morning, he told me he needed time to think and went to work early. Later that day, he called and told me he had talked to his mother again. He said she was hurt that I seemed so resistant. He said she thought I did not like her. I told him this was not about liking her. He said that was how she felt and that feelings matter. That is when I realized my feelings only seemed to matter when they aligned with what everyone else wanted. I told him I could not agree to move in and that I needed him to respect that. I told him I was willing to explore any other option, even if it meant tightening our belts more. He said he did not know how much longer he could keep living with financial stress when a solution was right there. Things became tense at home. Not loud fights, but a heavy silence. We started operating around each other instead of together. Then, one evening, he said something that forced the issue. He said, if I was not willing to move in with his mother then, maybe I was not willing to do what it takes to make our marriage work. I asked him if that was an ultimatum. He said he did not want it to be, but that he needed to see compromise. I told him, compromise does not mean one person gives everything and the other gets relief. I told him that if the only way our marriage survives is by me living somewhere I dread, then something is very wrong. We decided to see a counselor. In that session, I explained everything I had been holding back. How living with his mother would affect my mental health. How I already felt dismissed. How I was scared of losing my voice in our marriage. The counselor asked my husband why this option felt like the only viable one to him. He admitted that it was not just about money. He said he felt like a failure for struggling financially, and that accepting his mother's help felt like fixing that quickly. That was the first time I saw this from a different angle. But even then, the counselor pointed out that solving one problem by creating another does not lead to stability. She said both partners have to feel safe in their home, not just financially, but emotionally. We left that session with no decision, but with more honesty on the table. As of now, we are still living where we are. Money is tight. Stress is still there. But so is my boundary. I do not know what the future holds. I do know that agreeing to move in just to stop the conflict would have been the beginning of a different kind of breakdown. Final update. My refusal to move in with my mother-in-law is tearing my marriage apart. I took a while to write this because I needed to know whether I was reacting out of fear or finally seeing things clearly. A lot has happened since the last update, and while it did not end the way I once hoped, it did give me certainty. That certainty came with grief, but also with a strange sense of relief. After counseling, things felt calmer on the surface, but underneath there was a constant tension. My husband stopped pushing the move directly, but he did not let it go either. Every stressful bill, every unexpected expense somehow circled back to how different things would be if we had moved in with his mother. He did not say it angrily. He said it like a fact. Over time, that was almost worse. I tried to meet him halfway in other ways. I picked up extra hours. I cut back more than I already had. I sold things I cared about. I showed him that I was willing to struggle alongside him, just not in a way that cost me my sense of self. He acknowledged the effort, but it never felt like enough. The underlying disappointment never left his voice. The breaking point came during another visit to his mother's house. I went because I thought avoiding her completely would only make things worse. About halfway through the visit, she made a comment about how peaceful her house is and how much easier life is when everyone agrees on how things should be done. She looked directly at me when she said it. My husband said nothing. He smiled. Something in me shut down in that moment. It was not dramatic. I did not cry or argue. I just felt very tired. On the drive home, I asked him why he did not say anything. He said he did not want to start something. I asked him when he planned to start standing up for me. He said he felt like he was always being asked to choose. That was the moment I realized he had already chosen. Not loudly, not intentionally maybe, but consistently. He chose the path of least resistance, even when it meant I carried the discomfort alone. That night, we talked longer and more honestly than we had in months. He admitted that he still believed moving in with his mother was the smartest option and that he resented me for taking it off the table. He said he felt trapped between what made sense and what I wanted. I told him I felt trapped between staying married and staying whole. We sat in silence after that. There was no yelling, just the quiet understanding that we were no longer fighting the same problem. We were fighting the reality that our priorities had shifted in different directions. A few days later, I asked him directly if he could accept never living with his mother, even temporarily. He thought about it and said he did not know. That answer hurt, but it was honest. I thanked him for finally being honest and told him I could not keep living in a marriage where my boundaries were treated as obstacles. We decided to separate. It was mutual in the sense that neither of us tried to stop it. He moved out first and stayed with his mother. The irony of that was not lost on either of us, but we did not comment on it. The separation gave me space to breathe and to notice how much of myself I had been bracing every day. Over the following weeks, the fog lifted. I missed him in some ways, but I did not miss feeling constantly on edge. I did not miss questioning my instincts. I did not miss feeling like the difficult one for wanting peace in my own home. Eventually, we talked about the future and acknowledged what had become obvious. We wanted different things and measured sacrifice differently. For him, practicality meant immediate relief, even if it came with long-term emotional cost. For me, practicality meant sustainability, even if it meant short-term struggle. We are now in the process of divorce. It is not ugly, but it is sad. We are being respectful and focused on what is best moving forward, especially as parents. His mother is more involved in his life than ever now, and I hope it brings him the comfort he was seeking. As for me, I am learning that saying no does not make me ungrateful or selfish. It makes me honest. I learned that a solution that works on paper can still destroy you in practice. I learned that protecting your mental health is not a luxury, it is a responsibility. I still struggle financially. Life did not magically become easy. But my home is mine. My choices are mine. My voice is mine. That matters more than I ever realized when I was trying so hard to keep everyone else comfortable. If someone is reading this while being pressured into a living situation that feels wrong, please hear this. Cheaper does not always mean better. Help that costs you your peace is not help. And love that requires you to disappear is not the kind of love that lasts. Stories number 13. My marriage is stuck because my husband refuses to get a vasectomy, and now I don't even want kids anymore. I'm 31, and I've been married for 6 years. My husband's name is Aaron, and he's 34. When we got married, we both said we wanted kids someday. Not right away, not in a rush, just someday. At first, that someday felt far away. We wanted to travel. We wanted to save money. We wanted to enjoy being married. For the first few years, kids barely came up. Then around year 4, things shifted. Friends started having babies. Family started asking questions. My mom, Diane, would casually say things like, "I can't wait to be a grandma." Aaron's dad, Harold, would joke, "When are you going to give me a little fishing buddy?" At first, I laughed it off. But inside, I started really thinking about it. I realized something about myself that I hadn't fully faced before. I don't actually love the idea of being pregnant. The idea of my body changing, the pain, the risks, the loss of control, it scares me. I'm not anti-kids, but I'm very cautious about what pregnancy and childbirth actually mean for me. So I told Aaron that if we ever did have kids, I would want it to be one and done. And after that, I would want him to get a vasectomy. I told him I didn't want to go through pregnancy and then spend the rest of my life terrified of getting pregnant again. I've been on birth control since I was 19 and I hate it. The side effects mess with my mood, my weight, and my energy. When I first said this, he laughed and said, "We'll talk about that when the time comes." But the time did come. Last year, when I turned 30, I told him I wanted a serious conversation about kids. Not vague someday talk. Real talk. We sat at the kitchen table. I said, "I'm not sure I even want kids anymore, but if I do, it would be one. And after that, I need you to get a vasectomy." He looked uncomfortable right away. He said, "I don't like the idea of someone cutting into me." I said, "I don't like the idea of being pregnant either, but that would be my body on the line." He said, "It's not the same." That hurt. I said, "How is it not the same? Pregnancy can literally kill me." "A vasectomy is a simple procedure," he said. "It still freaks me out. What if something goes wrong? What if I regret it?" I said, "What if I regret having to carry all the risk forever?" He didn't answer that. Over the next few months, this became our biggest fight. Every time kids came up, it ended the same way. He said he wanted kids. I said I might want one, but only if he agreed to a vasectomy after. He said he couldn't promise that. I said then I couldn't promise a child. At some point, I started leaning more toward not wanting kids at all. Not because I hate children, but because the whole situation made it feel unsafe for me. It felt like I was the only one being asked to sacrifice. My best friend Rachel has 2 kids. I talked to her about it. She said, "I love my kids, but pregnancy wrecked me. If my husband refused to take on any of the long-term responsibility, I'd be furious." That made me feel less crazy. Aaron's mom, Patricia, doesn't know the details, but she's been pushing hard for grandkids. She'll say things like, "You'll change your mind. All women do." Every time she says that, something inside me shuts down a little more. One night, after a family dinner, Aaron said, My parents think you're the one holding this up. I said, you're the one refusing to meet me halfway. He said, why is it always about your fear and never about mine? I said, because your fear is about a minor surgery and my fear is about my entire body and life. He said, so my fear doesn't matter. I said, it matters, but it shouldn't outweigh mine every single time. He got quiet after that. A few weeks later, I went to my doctor, a woman named Dr. Collins, to talk about birth control options because I was so tired of the pill. I asked about getting my tubes tied. She said it's possible, but many doctors hesitate with younger women, and it's major surgery compared to a vasectomy. She said, if your partner is willing, a vasectomy is safer, cheaper, and easier. That just made me more frustrated. I told Aaron what the doctor said. He shrugged and said, that doesn't change how I feel. I said, so my options are risk pregnancy, stay on hormones I hate forever, or get surgery myself. He said, those aren't my choices. I said, but they are the result of your choice that led to our worst fight yet. He said, I was trying to control his body. I said he was already controlling mine by refusing to share the responsibility. He slept on the couch that night. After that, I stopped bringing up kids, but instead of making things better, it made me feel numb. I started imagining my future, and I couldn't see kids in it anymore. Not because I suddenly hated the idea, but because the conditions around it felt unfair and scary. One night, while we were watching TV, he said, so are you ever going to tell me if you actually want kids or not? I said, I don't think I do anymore. He sat up and said, since when? I said, since I realized that having kids with you means I carry all the risk and you carry none of it. He said, that's not fair. I said, neither is expecting me to sacrifice my body while you refuse to consider a small procedure. He said, so you're punishing me by saying no to kids. I said, I'm protecting myself. He said, that sounds selfish. That word stuck with me. Selfish. For not wanting to risk my life and health without a partner willing to share the burden. I talked to my sister, Megan, about it. She said, if he wants kids so badly, why isn't he willing to do one hard thing for it? That's the question that keeps looping in my head. Aaron says he loves me. I believe him. But sometimes I wonder if he loves the idea of being a father more than he loves being my partner. We're at a standstill now. He still wants kids. I'm leaning more and more toward no. Not because I hate kids, but because I don't trust that I'll be supported the way I need to be. Sometimes I feel guilty. I wonder if I'm taking something away from him. Other times, I feel angry that he thinks my body is the default sacrifice. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if I'll regret not having kids. I don't know if I'll regret staying in a marriage where this never gets resolved. All I know is that I'm tired of feeling like my fear is less important than his comfort. Update. My marriage is stuck because my husband refuses to get a vasectomy, and now I don't even want kids anymore. It's been about 2 months since I wrote that, and things have not magically gotten better. If anything, they've gotten clearer, and that's been both painful and relieving at the same time. After that last big fight, we kind of lived in silence for a while. Not angry yelling silence, but heavy silence. We talked about groceries, work, the dog, but not about us. One night, I finally said, we can't keep pretending this isn't there. Aaron sighed and said, I know. I just don't know how to fix it, I said. I don't either, but we have to try something. We agreed to see a couples therapist. Her name is Laura. She's calm, older, and doesn't let either of us dodge questions. In the first session, she asked what the main conflict was. We both said kids at the same time. That almost made me laugh. She asked each of us to explain our side without interrupting. Aaron said he wants to be a dad. He said he imagines teaching a kid to ride a bike, going to games, doing homework at the kitchen table. He said he's afraid a vasectomy would close a door forever, and he doesn't like feeling forced into something permanent. Then it was my turn. I said I'm afraid of pregnancy, not in a dramatic way, but in a real, physical way. I said I'm afraid of complications, of losing control of my body, of being stuck with all the responsibility of birth control forever. I said I don't feel safe having a child with someone who won't share that long-term responsibility. Laura said something that stuck with me. She said, "You're both talking about fear, but you're not treating each other's fear as equal." Aaron looked at me, and I looked at him, and neither of us said anything. In later sessions, Laura pushed us harder. She asked Aaron why the idea of a vasectomy scared him so much. At first he said, "I just don't like surgery." But she didn't let him stop there. Eventually he admitted he's scared of losing a sense of control over his body, of feeling less of a man, even though he knows that doesn't logically make sense. He said he's scared of regretting it if something happened to me or if our relationship changed. Hearing that last part hurt more than I expected. I told him, "When you say that, it makes me feel like you're already planning for a life without me." He said, "I'm not planning it. I'm just scared of locking myself into one future." I said, "But you're fine, locking me into all the risk?" He didn't answer. Laura asked me what I really want, not what I think is fair, but what I actually want. I thought about it for a long time. I said, "Right now, I want to feel safe." And I don't. That was the first time I admitted that out loud. A few weeks into therapy, Aaron surprised me. He said he would talk to a doctor about what a vasectomy actually involves. Not a promise, just information. He went to an appointment and came back quiet. Later that night, he said, "The doctor said it's pretty simple." I didn't expect that. I said, "Does that change how you feel?" He said, "A little. But I still hate the idea of something being permanent." I said, "Pregnancy is permanent too. It permanently changes me." He nodded, but I could tell he was still stuck. Meanwhile, something else changed in me. The more we talked about this, the more I realized that my desire for kids had always been tied to feeling supported. And without that, it just faded. Not in a dramatic way. It just slowly stopped being something I wanted. I told Laura, "I don't think I'm just scared of pregnancy. I think I might actually be okay not being a mom." She asked, "How does that feel?" I said, "Strangely calm." That scared me more than anything else. When I told Aaron, he looked devastated. He said, "So now it's not even about the vasectomy anymore. You just don't want kids?" I said, "I don't know if I never wanted them, or if this situation killed the desire. But right now, no. I don't." He said, "So what am I supposed to do with wanting to be a dad?" I said, "I don't know. What am I supposed to do with not wanting to be pregnant and not feeling safe?" That question hung between us. Therapy started to feel less like fixing something and more like understanding whether it can be fixed at all. One night after a session, Aaron said, "If I agreed to the vasectomy, would that make you want a kid?" I thought about it honestly and said, "I don't think so. Not anymore." He looked like I'd punched him. He said, "So all this time, I thought that was the key." I said, "It was, for a while. But now, I'm not the same person I was when we started this." He said, "So you changed." I said, "So did you." We just changed in different directions. That was the first time the word divorce entered my head without me pushing it away. We haven't said it out loud yet, but it's there, in the space between us, in the way he looks at me sometimes, like he's trying to memorize me, in the way I sometimes look at him and feel sad instead of angry. I still love him. That's what makes this so hard. This isn't about cheating or abuse or hate. It's about wanting different futures. Laura says sometimes love isn't enough when the life you want doesn't fit together. I don't know where this will end. I don't know if he'll decide he can live without kids, or if I'll decide I actually want one after all. But I do know that pretending will only make it worse. Right now, we're still married. We still share a bed. We still say love you when one of us leaves the house. But there's a question hanging over everything. Stories number 14. My patience finally snapped when my pregnant sister asked me to give her my car. I'm writing this because my whole family is acting like I committed some unforgivable crime, and I genuinely don't know if I'm losing my grip on reality or if I'm the only one being reasonable. Here, I'm exhausted and angry and hurt, and I need outside perspective because right now everyone around me is either emotional or defensive or both. I'm in my early 30s and I've worked my way up from nothing. No safety net, no help. I moved out at 18 and paid my way through everything. Rent, food, school, emergencies. I learned early that if I didn't save myself, nobody else was going to. That mindset is relevant here because it's the complete opposite of how my younger sister has lived. My sister Lauren is pregnant with her first child. She's in her late 20s and still very much the baby of the family. She's always had support. Our parents helped her with rent more than once. They covered her phone bill well into her 20s. When she quit jobs because they were too stressful, she moved back home without question. I don't say this to be cruel. It's just the reality of how differently we've been treated. I bought my car 3 years ago after saving for a long time. It's not luxury, but it's reliable and paid off, and it represents security to me. I commute for work. I take care of errands. I don't have a backup vehicle. If something happens to it, I'm stuck. This car is not extra. It's essential. Lauren and her boyfriend Tyler have been struggling financially. Tyler jumps between jobs, and Lauren stopped working early in her pregnancy. I understand pregnancy is hard, and I don't judge her for that. What I do judge is the expectation that everyone else is supposed to fill the gaps without question. It started with small things. Can you help with groceries? Can you cover this bill just this once? Can you drive me to appointments? I helped when I could. I really did. I gave rides. I bought diapers. I listened to endless venting. I didn't complain because I thought this is temporary, and she's my sister. Then a few weeks ago, she came over and asked if we could talk privately. She looked serious, so I assumed something was wrong. We sat down, and she told me she and Tyler were really stressed because they didn't have a reliable car. Tyler's breaks down constantly. She said being pregnant without a car makes her anxious. I nodded and agreed that sounded scary. Then she said she had a solution. She asked if I could give her my car, not borrow, not help her buy one, give it to her. She said since I don't have kids and work from home part-time, it made more sense for me to sacrifice. She said I could always get another one later. I honestly thought she was joking. I laughed and waited for her to laugh too. She didn't. She looked offended. She said she was being serious and that family helps family. I told her I couldn't do that. I explained calmly that I need my car and that it's not something I can just replace. She immediately got emotional. She said I was being selfish. She said I cared more about a car than my niece or nephew. She said she was scared and pregnant and I was choosing convenience over her safety. That's when I snapped. Not screaming, but firm and sharp in a way I usually avoid. I told her she wasn't entitled to my car just because she chose to have a baby she wasn't prepared for. I told her my life doesn't become disposable because she's pregnant. I told her she didn't get to decide what sacrifices other people make to fix her situation. She started crying and left. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up. My mom said I went too far. My dad said I should be more compassionate. An aunt messaged me saying pregnancy hormones are intense and I should apologize. Tyler sent me a passive-aggressive text saying he hoped I never needed help someday. What hurts the most is how nobody acknowledged how insane the request was. Not one person said, hey, maybe asking someone to give you their car is too much. It was all about my tone and my delivery and how Lauren is vulnerable right now. I feel like I'm being punished for having boundaries. I already help more than anyone else. I didn't shame her. I didn't yell. I just refused to hand over something I worked for. Somehow, that makes me the villain. I keep replaying the conversation, wondering if I could have been gentler. But I also feel like gentleness would have turned into pressure and guilt until I caved. This isn't the first time my needs were treated as optional, because hers were louder. I love my sister. I want her and her baby to be okay. But I don't think love means surrendering your stability because someone else demands it. I don't think pregnancy gives someone ownership over other people's lives. Now family gatherings are awkward. My mom keeps hinting that I should reconsider. Lauren hasn't spoken to me. I'm being treated like I kicked her while she was down, instead of someone who said no to an unreasonable demand. I genuinely don't know if I overreacted or if I'm finally refusing to play a role I was never supposed to have. I just know I'm tired of being expected to give and give until there's nothing left and then being called selfish when I stop. Update. My patience finally snapped when my pregnant sister asked me to give her my car. I didn't expect this situation to keep escalating, but it somehow managed to get worse before it got clearer. After everything blew up, I stayed quiet for a few days because every message I received felt like it was designed to push me into apologizing without actually addressing what happened. No one asked me how I was doing. No one asked what giving up my car would realistically mean for my life. It was all focused on Lauren's feelings and her stress and how pregnancy is hard. I finally agreed to meet my parents in person because they said they wanted to talk things through calmly. I went in hoping for some balance. Instead, it felt like an intervention. My mom immediately started crying and saying she didn't raise me to be cold. My dad kept saying, "This isn't about the car, it's about family." I asked them directly if they would give up their car if someone asked. They didn't answer right away. That silence told me a lot. They tried reframing it as a temporary thing. They said maybe I could let Lauren use my car until the baby is born. I asked what I would do in the meantime. My mom said I could figure something out, like borrowing theirs or using ride shares. That's when I realized how easy it is for people to volunteer your inconvenience when it doesn't affect them. I told them my work schedule isn't flexible and I can't rely on other people to get to appointments or emergencies. My dad said people make sacrifices all the time when kids are involved. I asked a question that changed the tone of the room. I asked why the sacrifice always has to come from me. Why Tyler's parents weren't being asked to give up anything. Why no one suggested Tyler get a stable job or sell something he owns. My mom said that wasn't the point. I told her it was exactly the point. Later that night, Lauren finally texted me. It wasn't an apology. It was a long message about how betrayed she felt and how she thought I would step up for her. She said she always looked up to me and this changed how she sees me. That one hurt. I sat with it for a long time before responding. I told her I loved her, but loving her doesn't mean giving up my independence. I told her I was willing to help in realistic ways, but giving her my car was not one of them. She replied saying she felt judged and that I made her feel like a bad mother before she even gave birth. That stung because it wasn't my intention at all. I told her I never said she was a bad mother. I said the situation wasn't mine to fix. She didn't respond after that. A few days later, Tyler showed up at my place unannounced. That crossed a line for me. He tried to act calm, but it quickly turned into him lecturing me about responsibility and how I don't understand what it's like to be a parent. I reminded him that I wasn't the one expecting someone else to hand over a car. He said I was being stubborn over an object. I told him my car is how I get to work and pay my bills. He said family should come before money. I asked him why he hadn't figured out reliable transportation before bringing a child into the world. He got angry and said I was attacking him. I told him he needed to leave. He did, but not before saying he hoped I'd feel guilty every time I drove my car. That comment stuck with me in a way I didn't expect. After that, I set boundaries more clearly than I ever have. I told my parents I wouldn't discuss giving up my car again. I told them if the pressure continued, I would take a step back. My mom accused me of threatening distance. I told her it wasn't a threat. It was a consequence. Something shifted after that. Not immediately, but slowly. My dad called me a few days later and said he'd been thinking. He admitted that asking me to give up my car was too much. He said they were panicking and trying to solve the problem quickly, and I became the easiest solution. Hearing that made me feel both validated and sad. I wish that realization had come sooner. Lauren is still distant. I don't know when or if that will change. I've made peace with the fact that I can't control her reaction. I've offered to help in other ways, like driving her to appointments when I can and helping look for affordable used cars. I'm not going to keep proving that I care by sacrificing my stability. What this whole situation has shown me is how quickly people confuse generosity with obligation. I was generous for years, and the moment I said no, it was treated like betrayal. That's not a dynamic I'm willing to continue. I don't feel guilty anymore. Sad sometimes, yes, but not guilty. I didn't take anything from her. I didn't put her in this situation. I simply refused to disappear to make things easier for everyone else. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I stood up for myself even when it made me unpopular. Final update. My patience finally snapped when my pregnant sister asked me to give her my car. I waited to write this because I wanted to be sure nothing else was going to explode, and because I needed to know how I actually felt once the dust settled. Things didn't magically resolve, but they did reach a point where I finally understand where I stand and what I'm willing to accept going forward. After my last conversation with my dad, word clearly got around that I wasn't backing down. The pressure eased almost immediately, which honestly confirmed what a few people pointed out to me privately. I was the easiest solution because I've always been the reliable one. Once it became clear I wasn't available as a fix, the family had to actually look at other options. Lauren and Tyler ended up getting help from Tyler's parents. Not a car outright, but enough money for a down payment on a used one that runs. Funny how that became possible once my car was officially off the table. When I heard about it, I felt a mix of relief and bitterness. Relief that the baby won't be without transportation, and bitterness that this option apparently existed the whole time, but no one wanted to push for it. Because pushing me was easier. Lauren eventually reached out. The message was short and cautious. She said she was still hurt, but she understood now that asking for my car crossed a line. She didn't apologize directly, but she acknowledged that she put me in an unfair position. I decided not to push for more. I told her I love her, and I want to be in her life, and the baby's life, but it has to be based on mutual respect. She agreed. We're not back to normal, but we're speaking again. And that's something. Tyler hasn't apologized, and I don't expect him to. He avoids me at family gatherings, and I'm fine with that. I've realized I don't need everyone to like me, especially when liking me seems to require me to give up pieces of myself. My parents have been noticeably more careful with how they talk to me. My mom still gets emotional, but she stopped hinting, and my dad has backed me up more than once when the topic comes up indirectly. What really changed is how I feel internally. For the first time, I didn't cave to keep the peace, and the world didn't end. People were uncomfortable, feelings were hurt, and yet everyone survived. That realization has been huge for me. I've spent so much of my life believing that setting boundaries would make me the bad guy forever. Instead, it just exposed who was benefiting from me not having any. I'm still helping where I choose to. I've driven Lauren to a couple of appointments. I've helped set up the nursery. The difference now is that it's voluntary and appreciated instead of expected and demanded. I'm no longer the default solution to every problem, and that feels strange but also freeing. I don't regret snapping. I regret that it took snapping for anyone to hear me. If I had softened it any more, I truly believe this would have dragged on until I gave in or broke down completely. Sometimes being firm is the only language people listen to. I've accepted that some people in my family may always see me as the difficult one. I'm okay with that. I finally understand that being seen as generous shouldn't require self-sacrifice to the point of instability. I can love my family without giving up my independence and my safety. This situation taught me that boundaries don't destroy families. They reveal the weak spots. What you do after that determines whether things improve or stay broken. I chose to stop being the person who disappears to keep everyone else comfortable, and I'm not going back to that version of myself. Stories number 15. My decision not to pay for my daughter's wedding. My name is Ronald, and I am 58 years old living in Michigan. I have two daughters. My older daughter is named Brooke, and my younger daughter is named Kayla. Their mother, Susan, and I divorced when the girls were teenagers, but we stayed civil and focused on raising them right. Brooke is 30 now and married. Kayla is 25 and engaged. This story is about why I paid for Brooke's wedding but am refusing to pay for Kayla's, and how that decision has turned my family upside down. When Brooke got engaged 5 years ago to a man named Daniel, I offered to help pay for the wedding. Not because I am rich, because I am not, but because I planned for it for years. I told both girls when they were young that if they followed certain rules, I would help with their weddings. Those rules were simple: finish school or learn a real trade, stay out of serious trouble, and respect the family. Brooke followed those rules. She finished college, got a job as a physical therapist, stayed out of legal trouble, and always treated both me and her mom with respect. When she got engaged, she came to me and said she wanted a small wedding. I ended up paying about $35,000 total. I did it gladly. It made me proud to see her walk down the aisle, knowing I helped give her that day. Kayla has always been different. She is emotional, impulsive, and very stubborn. She is also smart, but she never liked school. She dropped out of college after 1 year and bounced between jobs. I never yelled at her for that. I just told her she needed a plan. Over the years, she has been in and out of relationships. Some were fine, some were disasters. About a year ago, she started dating a man named Trevor. I did not like Trevor from the beginning. He never looked me in the eye, never held a job for more than a few months, and always had an excuse for everything. 6 months into dating, Kayla moved in with him. She did not tell me until after she already did it. I told her I did not think it was a good idea, but she said she was an adult and could make her own choices. I agreed she could, but that choices come with consequences. 3 months ago, she told me she was engaged. I asked how long Trevor had been working his current job. She said 2 weeks. That worried me. Then she told me she was pregnant. That shocked me, but I told her I would support her as her father. A week later, she came to me with wedding plans. She had already booked a venue, picked a dress, and made a guest list. Then she said, "So how much can you give us?" I asked her what she meant. She said, "For the wedding, like you did for Brooke." I told her we needed to talk seriously. I reminded her of the rules I gave both girls years ago. She said those rules were unfair and outdated. She said life is different now. I told her Brooke followed them, and that is why I helped her. Kayla said it was not her fault she struggled more. She said I was punishing her for not being Brooke. I told her I was not punishing her. I told her I was holding her to the same standard. I asked her what her plan was for work, for the baby, and for the future. She said she and Trevor would figure it out. That answer scared me. I told her I would not pay for a big wedding when she and her fiancé could not even support themselves yet. I said if she wanted a small courthouse wedding, I would gladly help with that. But I would not spend tens of thousands on a party when their lives were unstable. She started crying and yelling. She said I loved Brooke more. She said I was choosing favorites. She stormed out of my house and did not talk to me for a week. Her mom, Susan, called me and said I was being too harsh. She said Kayla needs support, not pressure. I told her support does not mean writing a blank check. Then Brooke called me. She said Kayla told her I was cutting her off because I hate Trevor. That is not true. I do not like Trevor, but this is about responsibility, not feelings. Brooke said she understood my point, but said it still looks bad. She said people will talk. I told her people always talk. A few days later, Kayla came back. She was calmer. She said she would compromise. She said they would do a smaller wedding if I paid half. I asked how much small was. She showed me a budget of $20,000. I told her that is not small to me. I told her I could give $5,000. That is what I can give without hurting my retirement or emergency savings. She said that was insulting. She said I spent 7 times that on Brooke. I told her Brooke earned that support by being responsible. She told me I was choosing money over my daughter. That hurt. I told her I am choosing her future over one day. She said Trevor's parents are giving them nothing, so they need me. That made me even more firm. I told her that should tell her something. Now most of the family is split. My brother Kevin says I am right. My sister Laura says I am being cold. Some cousins have stopped talking to me. Kayla barely speaks to me unless it is about money. I lie awake at night thinking about it. I wonder if I am being too strict. I also wonder what will happen to her if I give in and pretend everything is fine. I love both my daughters. But love does not mean treating different choices the same way. Love sometimes means saying no. I will be at Kayla's wedding, even if it is in a courthouse or a backyard. I will hold her hand when she has that baby. I will help her when she truly needs it. But I will not pretend that ignoring every warning sign deserves the same reward as years of responsibility. That may make me the bad guy in her story, but I would rather be honest now than sorry later. Update: my decision not to pay for my daughter's wedding. It has been a little over 4 months since everything blew up, and I wish I could say things settled down quickly, but they did not. The first few weeks were the hardest. Kayla barely spoke to me unless she needed something. When she did talk, her tone was cold and short, like I was a stranger who happened to share her last name. Trevor started showing up more in the background of every conversation. If Kayla texted me, I could almost hear his voice in the words. Things like, "We feel like you don't care about us, and we just want the same support Brooke got." I kept replying the same way. I told her I care deeply, but I will not fund choices that scare me. Susan tried to play middle ground at first. She would call me and say things like, "She's pregnant and emotional, you have to understand that." I told her I do understand that, but pregnancy does not erase responsibility. Then one night, she admitted something that changed how I saw her side. She said she had already given Kayla money, not for the wedding, but for rent, because Trevor lost another job. She had not told me because she knew I would be upset. That explained a lot. It explained why Kayla felt so sure someone would always fix things. It also explained why Susan thought I was being cruel, because she was already quietly doing the opposite. About a month before the wedding date they originally planned, Kayla showed up at my house without calling. She looked tired. Not dramatic tired, but real tired. She sat at my kitchen table and just stared at her hands for a while. Then she said, "Trevor quit his job again." I asked why. She said, "He said the boss disrespected him." I asked what that meant. She said, "He told him to show up on time." She started crying. Not yelling this time, just crying. She said she feels trapped. She said she loves him, but she is scared. She said she wishes things felt more stable. I told her that is exactly why I did not want to pour a lot of money into a wedding. I told her a wedding does not fix a shaky foundation. She did not argue this time. She just nodded. She stayed for hours that night. We talked more honestly than we had in years. I told her I am not her enemy. I told her I want her safe, not fancy. She told me she feels like everyone is judging her. I told her some people judge, but I worry. A week later, she called and said they canceled the big venue. She said they were doing a small backyard wedding at Trevor's aunt's place. She did not ask me for more money. She just told me the date. I told her I would be there. I also told her the $5,000 I offered still stands. She said okay. She did not thank me, but she did not fight me either. The wedding was small. Maybe 30 people, folding chairs, simple food, no fancy decorations. Kayla looked beautiful anyway. She always does when she is smiling for real. Trevor looked nervous. I shook his hand. It was awkward, but I did it. Susan cried through the whole thing. I felt proud and scared at the same time. Proud of my daughter for showing up and scared of what her future might look like. After the wedding, things did not magically get better. Trevor still bounced between jobs. Kayla called me one night crying because the car broke down and they had no money to fix it. I paid for the repair, not because I changed my mind, but because she needed to get to doctor appointments. She thanked me that time. Really thanked me. That was new. Then 2 months later, Trevor and Kayla had a big fight and she came to stay with me for 3 nights. She did not say she was leaving him, just that she needed space. She slept in her old room. It felt strange and familiar at the same time. She told me she sometimes thinks I saw things she did not want to see. She said she is not ready to say I was right, but she is starting to understand why I was so firm. The baby is due in a few weeks now. Kayla and Trevor are still together, but I can see cracks. I do not push, I just listen. I help when it is about safety, health, or basic needs. I do not hand over money for dreams that ignore reality. Some family members still think I am cold. Others now quietly tell me they respect that I did not fold. Kayla and I are not perfect, but we are better. We talk. We laugh sometimes. She even jokes that if her kid ever wants a big wedding, she will tell them to earn it. I do not know what the future holds for her marriage. I do not know if Trevor will grow up or not. I do know this. Saying no did not mean I stopped being her father. It meant I stayed her father instead of becoming her wallet. And even if she never fully agrees with my choices, I can live with that. I could not live with watching her walk into something dangerous while I paid for the decorations. Update: my decision not to pay for my daughter's wedding. It has been almost a year now since Kayla got married, and life has changed in ways I did not expect. Some slow and quiet, some loud and painful. The baby was born healthy, a little boy they named Lucas. When Kayla called me from the hospital, her voice sounded different, softer, tired, but steady. I went to see her that same day. Holding my grandson for the first time did something to me that I cannot fully explain. It made everything feel more serious, more real. This was no longer about arguments over weddings or money. This was about a child who did not choose any of this. Trevor was there too. He looked scared, not just nervous, but scared in a way that told me he finally understood he was responsible for more than just himself. For a while, he actually tried. He got a job at a warehouse and kept it for almost 5 months, which is the longest he has ever held a job. Kayla told me he was waking up early, coming home tired, and actually talking about saving money. I allowed myself to feel a little hope. For a few months, things were calmer. Kayla and I talked more. She would come over with Lucas and let me watch him while she napped. Sometimes she would just sit at my kitchen table and talk about how hard motherhood is, how lonely it feels even when you love your baby more than anything. I listened. I did not lecture. I think she needed a father more than a judge. Then things started slipping again. Trevor began complaining about his job. Too hard. Too boring. Too strict. I knew what that meant. One night, Kayla called me crying. He had quit again without telling her. They had almost no savings. Rent was due in 2 weeks. I did not yell. I asked her what her plan was. She said she did not know. She said she feels like she is carrying everything on her back. I told her I would help with diapers and formula, and I would watch Lucas if she wanted to look for work or go back to school. But I told her again that I would not fund chaos. A few days later, she showed up at my door with Lucas and 2 bags. She said she and Trevor had a huge fight. She said he accused her of changing since the baby was born. She said she told him he never grew up. He told her to leave, so she did. She stayed with me for almost a month. During that time, I saw my daughter in a way I had not seen her in years. Tired, yes. Stressed, yes. But also focused. She got a part-time job at a daycare. She started talking about finishing school online. She made a routine for Lucas. She stopped waiting for someone else to fix things. Trevor called sometimes. Sometimes he apologized. Sometimes he blamed her. She listened, but she did not rush back. One night, she sat at the table and said, "Dad, I think you were trying to protect me, not control me." That might be the most important thing she has ever said to me. Eventually, she did go back to Trevor, but not the same way as before. She told him if he quit another job without a plan, she and Lucas would leave again, for good. I do not know if he will change, but now she knows she can stand on her own if she has to. Our relationship is different now, not perfect, but real. She does not see me as the enemy anymore. I do not see her as a reckless kid anymore. I see her as a woman learning the hard way, just like a lot of people do. Brooke told me recently that watching all of this made her understand my decision more. She said she used to think I was being too rigid. Now she sees I was trying to draw a line between love and enabling. I still help when it is about safety, health, or my grandson. I still say no when it is about avoiding reality. Kayla does not always like it, but she respects it more than she used to. If I could go back, I would not change my decision. It cost me peace for a long time. It cost me being the good guy in a lot of people's eyes. But it may have helped my daughter learn how to stand when everything around her is shaking. Sometimes being a parent is not about being loved in the moment. It is about doing what you believe gives your child the best chance to survive the future, even if they hate you for it at first. Now when Kayla brings Lucas over and hands him to me, she sometimes says, "I'm glad you didn't give up on me, even when I was mad at you." And that tells me I did not choose money over my daughter. I chose her life over her feelings. And maybe, just maybe, that mattered.